Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and we have another loaded show coming your way today. We are going to break down Pete Bevacqua, Notre Dame's athletic director. He had a press conference today, so we're going to give our overarching thoughts on his press conference. We're going to go through some of the highlighted key points of what he talked about. And then in part two of today's show, we're going to talk about Notre Dame getting a commitment from 2027 cornerback Ace Alston. Another big pickup. Notre Dame's DB recruiting keeps rolling to the literal surprise of nobody who's been following this team and what Mike Mickens has been doing. But they pick up Ace Alston. And then we are going to wrap up today's show with another mailbag, folks. So make sure you get those questions in. If it's your first one, you can put a little MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji that lets us know to set that question aside. And then, like always, we can't go forever. So if you want to make sure your question gets answered, you can always put in a super chat at the end of the day as well. But Brian, where we're going to start today is we're going to talk about Pete Bevacqua's press conference today that was held at noon. And the thought was to address a lot of the things that had happened. Now, yesterday, he went on a media campaign. He talked on the Dan Patrick Show, talked on a Barstool podcast just about the various things that went down from this past weekend. And today you were there in person, talked through really a lot of the same things.
Yeah, it was funny because we get there and they're like, this is a Q&A session. And right then I was like, okay, no news is going to get broken, which you and I said yesterday we didn't expect news to get broken, but it'd be nice, if even if it's something like Marcus Freeman gets an extension. I think anybody who was thinking he was going to say, hey, we're leaving the ACC is going to be sadly disappointed. That was never going to happen. I think people that are saying it was a weak press conference, I think are probably missing a lot of points. And so I will talk about, I was there. That's the one thing that annoyed me. Kept raising my hand. Nobody would, call on me. I had some interesting questions to ask, including a proper way to ask if Marcus Freeman's going to get signed an extension as opposed to the way that was asked. But I actually think there was a lot of meat in this press conference. If your expectations were it was going to be some bangers, then you're going to be disappointed. But I think there was a lot of meat in this press conference. The funny thing was, very beginning, they're like, this is meant to be sort of like it was last year where we talk about all the Notre Dame sports. And I'm just like, you can't be serious. You can't think that in a press conference, Trev, you made a comment to me before it started. They gave him as much time to address all this stuff, and he's going to talk about all these sports that as we get Marcus Freeman gets to talk about Stanford. Like, you thought anyone, 2 days after everything had happened, you thought anyone was going to ask about Notre Dame basketball or hockey or anything else? Like, no. If you want to talk about those other sports, do it in a couple weeks. But nobody's going to talk about that. And all the questions, obviously, were about Notre Dame being left out of the playoffs. There were questions about which we will address. Notre Dame and the ACC's relationship, which we'll address. There was a comment about Marcus Freeman and his future at Notre Dame and any potential extension, which we'll address. I actually think there was a lot of meat to this press conference if the action that follows is there. My biggest takeaway, Trevor, is we will know how strong this press conference was going to be or was when over the next, I'd say, month or two. I said this to my dad last night. He goes, what do you expect to happen to the press conference? I was like, absolutely nothing. And I don't care. What I care about is in a month or two or three, we find out what the actions were that Notre Dame is going to take. If all we got was a 2-day Pete Bevacqua PC tour and Notre Dame sent a couple strongly worded letters, then I'm going to be ticked and it's going to happen again. If there's real consequences that come from this, then I don't care what he says at a press conference. He can give people are saying it's a soft, weak press conference. He can give all the soft, weak press conferences he wants if they're actually fighting behind the scenes. And there's some things he said today that if you put your emotion aside for a second and put your emotion of you wanted to see Pete Bevacqua come out with guns blazing as much as I did on shows I was on yesterday, or our post, our podcast after they were screwed over. That's not his job. That's my job. That's not his job. That's the job of other Notre Dame people. That's not his job. His job is to make some stern statements, which he did rationally, like the leader of an organization like Notre Dame should, and then do your fighting behind the scenes. But there was a couple things that were said in today's press conference that lead me to believe that the behind the scenes stuff is already happening, and there's more to say. So let's dive into it, Trevor, a little bit, and kind of talk about some of the different aspects, because I think people need to kind of take a step back and say, just because you didn't get the fire and brimstone that you were expecting doesn't mean there wasn't a lot in there. And we'll dive into those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's kind of the same that we talked about when the quarterback competition was ongoing. You know, and Marcus Freeman wasn't going to come up to the press conference after the first day of fall camp and say, hey, guys, this is exactly what we're evaluating in the quarterback competition. This is who's in the lead. Here's who's in second place. Here's who's in third place. And I'm going to give you guys a daily update. Like, Notre Dame has always played this stuff close to the chest. Most major schools going through anything like this play things close to the chest. I was not expecting Pete Bevacqua to lay out the entire game plan of what their resolve was going to be. So sometimes you have to look in between the lines a little bit about what was said. And that's why I'm happy that we are going through what we're talking about today. And the first one, Brian, that was mentioned, there's been a lot of concern in the chat, on the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. I've seen it on Twitter that anytime Marcus Freeman's name is mentioned in a coach's search, there is widespread panic. And I understand why. Notre Dame doesn't want to lose a guy like Marcus Freeman. Now, here's the awesome thing. Pete Bevacqua also knows that Notre Dame doesn't want to lose a commodity like Marcus Freeman. And today in his press conference, that was asked. It wasn't just as straightforward as like, are you going to extend Marcus Freeman? What are your thoughts? You know, it was more so, hey, he's drawn a lot of attention. Yeah, he's drawn a lot of attention. It was a very
weird, like, roundabout way of asking the question. It's like, dude, this is one of the questions I was going to ask. Listen, there's a lot of rumors out there about Marcus Freeman, and you can't control that. He's always going to be there. But is there anything that you guys are going to do publicly to kind of show that he's committed to you and you're committed to him beyond just saying we want him to be the coach for a long time?
Sure.
Like, that was basically, but it was a weird question that was not going to get the answer that we all wanted. But I still felt like there were some important pieces in there.
Yeah, absolutely. You go through and you look at what he actually said top to bottom about Marcus Freeman, and he started it off with a joke. He talked about, everybody has eyes on Marcus Freeman, college, NFL, but Hollywood does, right? But then he went on to say, look, he said he deserves it. He's the absolute best coach in the country for Notre Dame, full stop. One of the greatest college coaches in the country. People forget how young he is, so I get it. And that's a compliment to him and his success and the way he represents himself and the way he prepares and who he is and how he talks. This is the key part here, folks. One of my main obligations and responsibilities to this university is to make sure Marcus wakes up every day knowing that he is supported and valued by Notre Dame. And I can say with 100% certainty he feels the same way. And Notre Dame is totally aligned around the importance of college football for Notre Dame. We're totally aligned on how he is the perfect coach for Notre Dame. And as I like to say, it's tough to say he's more than the Notre Dame football coach, because being the Notre Dame football coach means so much, but he's more than the Notre Dame football coach. He's part of the university. He even started this out by saying, I would never say we wouldn't match anything when it comes to Marcus. I mean, so there was a lot of meat on the bone when he was talking about Marcus Freeman. And so in a very, very roundabout way, asked in a roundabout way, he basically said Marcus Freeman's not going anywhere. He's going to get attention.
He gave a roundabout answer to a roundabout question.
Yeah. Yeah. But all in all, Pete Bevacqua basically said, whatever a team is going to offer Marcus, we're just going to match that. My job is to make sure that he stays here. He's the perfect coach for this university. Based on a lot of the things that we've seen Marcus Freeman do during his tenure at Notre Dame, I would also agree. And yes, people are going to take shots. Oh, losing to NIU. Look, he also brought in like the #1 ranked recruiting class in 2026. Okay, he's 21-3 in his last 2 regular seasons. Marcus Freeman embraces Notre Dame. Pete went on to talk about how he's at other sporting events for Notre Dame. He's on the sidelines of women's basketball games. He's going to lacrosse games. He's going to baseball games. So he doesn't just sit up in his ivory tower in the coach's office and then just expect everybody to kind of do what he wants, like we've seen in previous regimes. He embraces what Notre Dame is and what it's about. So I thought, Brian, that was a really good answer to that question without coming out and blatantly saying, we're extending Marcus Freeman. Here's the exact amount that we're extending him by. He's not going anywhere for a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Trev, I wish the question was asked better. But then to add to what you're saying, there was also several comments he made during the press conference where he talked about Marcus and next year and how they're going to use this for fuel for the future and things like that. That's not it's two things. It's not the comments of someone who is hoping to convince a coach to stay. It's the comments of someone who assumes that a coach is going to stay. And it was basically him saying like, hey, we're going to do whatever we need to do to keep him here. But it was also comments of someone who doesn't feel like they're in a position where if we don't give him more money now, he's gone. I mean, it was more of the comments of making sure that as the landscape, he called it a living, breathing document, like the U.S. Constitution. I hate that expression for the Constitution. I don't think it's a living, breathing document. Yes, there's an amendment process, but it's not a living, breathing document. There are principles that never change. But there are things you can add on to those principles, but they can't contradict the principles. Sorry, getting ready to get fired up about that. Basically what he's saying is, we're going to negotiate Marcus Freeman's contract every year to make sure, and I quote, he's one of the top paid coaches in college football. He said it like 3 times. He's not, I mean, that was not the comment of someone who's concerned that Marcus Freeman's going to take the Giants job, which is the latest rumor. And I just want to remind people, we went through this crap last year. I don't want to go through this again in the chat and on the board. What about the Bears job? What about this job? What about that job? And stop listening to everything you don't see on Twitter. Spend 5 seconds looking at the actual who's putting the tweet out. And if it says 274 Sports or No 3 Sports, it's a troll account. Don't text it to me. Don't put it on the board. Don't assume it's true. Stop believing every flipping rumor that's out there on social media, especially when only one person is saying it. I can promise you that if Marcus Freeman's a legitimate candidate for the Giants, Pete Thamel won't go 4 days with that out there and not have something on it. Ross Dellinger's not going to go 4 days without having any comment on whether or not Marcus Freeman's a candidate for the Giants job. But some random guy or some random betting account that I've never heard of has it, and so now we've got to be worried about it. And I get 50 questions about it. Like, we're not going to do that this offseason. Remember, he was going to take the Bears job last year? He never, ever seriously considered the Bears job. Oh, he's having negotiations with Penn State. Penn State people said, that was a lie. Like, I don't want to do this all offseason. If Marcus Freeman leaves, we'll find out and he'll leave. But from everything I've been told, he has no intention of leaving. He just signed the #1 ranked recruiting class in the country. Trev, you had a great comment. His son's going to be at Cornell. Yeah, for 4 years. But his other kids are still in South Bend, Indiana. You know, like, he's not leaving. So I just I'm a little frustrated by that. And I wish we would have gotten like a, guys, Marcus isn't going anywhere. But that's not Pete Bevacqua's news to break. Marcus Freeman has to handle that. And if he doesn't want those rumors floating around his program, then he needs to address it. Or they need to, whenever the contract extension is finalized, they need to announce it. So, yeah, it'd been nice, you know, but it's just not happening. It's not happening.
No.
It's not happening.
No. It was, I remember during the press conference for Stanford Week, one of my buddies sent me a text message, and it was like, heard Marcus Freeman's private plane just landed to interview for the Michigan State job. It's like, that's funny because I'm actively watching Marcus Freeman in his press conference right now for Stanford. You just can't believe everything you read on the internet, folks. Just can't. And especially if it involves the NFL, on top of some of the guys that Brian mentioned, if it doesn't come from like an Ian Rappaport and like the real Ian Rappaport account, not the
Adam Schefter.
Yeah. Like if it comes from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, some of the NFL guys, then we can talk about it. But You just got to pay attention to the source. Like all news, you have to pay attention to the source. That's for sure. But moral of the story here, folks, Pete Bevacqua made it very loud and clear that all hands are on deck to keep Marcus Freeman in South Bend, essentially until he decides he no longer wants to be in South Bend. And I don't see that being anytime soon, because to Brian's point, he was talking about what the resolve was going to be. That's not the conversation you have with somebody who's like, hey, I might be out of here, guys. But, you know, that's just not. So
anyway, so we can move on from that topic of conversation and get to the next interesting thing that was discussed today. But we wanted to get that out of there first.
Yeah, totally. The next thing that was talked about, and obviously, as we know, this was a very eventful weekend for the Notre Dame football program, and on their way of getting snubbed from the playoffs, they also declined their bowl, and they declined to participate in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and they were allegedly supposed to face BYU, who is now going to play Georgia Tech. And so Pete Bevacqua was asked about that today, and then he also addressed that, and there was rumblings, and he had made some statements before on the Dan Patrick Show and with Barstool that it was a player-led decision, and he provided a lot of clarity on that. And so this is really what he said. He said, quote, "This was a team that had national championship aspirations. This was a team that was unbelievably close-knit. And in the crazy world of major college football emotions, you find out you're not in the college football playoff, and you're shocked." Which, by the way, rightfully so. This isn't a quote, but like we've talked about so many times before in the show, 5 minutes before the playoff selection committee show went live on FanDuel, they were at minus 3,500 odds to make the playoffs. So, yeah, I understand the shock. I really understand the shock, but that's neither here nor there. And then Pete went on to say, and then you get a call, hey, do you want to go play in this bowl game? Marcus places a ton of emphasis on the roles of the captains of the team. You saw that if you watch the Peacock documentary, so on and so forth. They have a real role in our team and in the decisions the team makes. Week in and week out, he relies on those captains, and he really treats them as a key element of the decision-making process, bouncing things off of them. How's the team feeling? What are we thinking? I think his relationship with the team, but particularly with the captains, is magical. So what he did is he reached out to the captains and said, hey, listen, this is rough. Let's not make an emotional decision. Let's make a smart decision, take a deep breath, so on and so forth. Basically what the resounding answer was get with the team and talk with each other about it. Get a sense of how the team feels. He said, quote, "The unanimous message that came back was we are such a close team, those guys in that locker room, that they wanted to make sure that the last team that took the field as part of the 2025 Notre Dame team was the same team that took the field when we got off the plane in Miami. They didn't feel it was right for this team to make the decision to go out there and not be that full team that has been so close together, that's going to have a great event here in town." Goes on to talk about how they continue to be a close-knit team and they're going to do things together now that the season is over. But Pete Bevacqua provided a lot of clarity that this was a player-driven decision, and it adds to the context as to why, Brian and I talked yesterday about we supported the decision. We understood it. I would have loved to watch them play as a fan. You're talking to somebody that has gone to blue gold games in the rain just to watch the gold helmet shine and them play in some form of a game. And Brian talked about it from the business implication side yesterday. We would have loved to watch Notre Dame play, but now we understand the decision and it's in full light.
That's why we appreciated all the super chats the last 2 days, because we need to stash that up here in December, because things are gonna die down a lot in December and January because Notre Dame's not going on the long playoff run that they're in, and people are going to start. I saw it yesterday, last 2 days on memberships. When the season's over with, there's always a group of people, monthly subscribers, that cancel their memberships and then basically take the offseason off. Unfortunately, they're doing that a month earlier than normal, and so that's part of the deal. But you've got to be. I'm okay with fans not liking the decision. I'm truly okay with that. You don't have to like everything that Notre Dame says or does. You don't have to agree with everything Notre Dame says and does. You don't have to agree with the players because it was their decision. Just because it was their decision doesn't mean you have to agree with it. My only thing is, but understand where it's coming from. If you're not going to like it, which is your right to do, and again, this, Trev, we're not cult members. Just because we're fans of a team doesn't mean we have to be cult members where we agree and believe everything that they say and do. But I think when you sit back and understand it, and I'm glad he made very clear this was a player-led decision. The comment about Freeman saying, take a beat, relax, think about it, and then the fact that they came back and that's what they wanted to do made a lot of sense. He reiterated a lot of things that you and I said about why they made the decision. This team has been going for a long time. You go from spring 2024, they get like a week off. You're right into summer workouts. They get a week off. You go all the way through the long 2024 season. Well, they don't get a bye till way late in the season. Then you go into the college football playoffs. You're a banged-up football team anyway. You go till late January on that. Then you're starting right back up at the beginning of March with spring ball. And before spring ball, you got a month of strength programs going in. The kids missed Christmas. They missed New Year's. They were with the team. They were doing stuff. Then they go right to spring ball. get a week off, go right to summer work, couple weeks off, go right to summer workouts, get a week off, and you're right back into the season again in what was a long grinding season. And I just think it's like, look, what are we gonna? Why should we play this game? What's the point of playing this game? Now, there's some other things that I believe to be true about their decision that he did not get into, nor should he get into, in regard to the statement they're trying to make. That's not his message to make. I don't think that's going to really be super helpful. But I understand it. I would always like to play football. As a coach, I would always like to play football. As a business owner, I would love to cover another game. I think my wife's even more mad than me because she was hoping we could go down to Orlando in December and January for the bowl game. But looking at it from putting myself in their shoes or as their coach, I respect the fact that they took a principled stance. This isn't about, I'm mad, I'm upset, we got screwed, I don't want to play anymore. I get the point that they're making. Oh, this is the last time this team's going to be together. I understand that. They know we're not going to have Jeremiah Love. We're probably going to have Jadarian Price. We're not going to have Malachi Fields. We're not going to have this guy, that guy, the other guy. Like that, the team that played against Stanford will be no more if we're not in the playoffs. And this team has been grinding for a while. And again, I think that there was a desire to say we're not going to play in a bowl game that we keep being told is meaningless. And then you get to hype up how we got shafted for the next month. Not going to do it. But I hope that now all the people that got all up in their soapboxes the last couple of weeks about how the administration could do this to the players can finally sit there and say, okay, well, this wasn't Marcus Freeman telling the players they weren't going to play. This wasn't Pete Bevacqua using the players to make his political stance on this whole thing. This is the players saying, no, this is our voice, and we're not going to do this. And whether you agree with it or not, I think we can all at least understand. We want Notre Dame to fight, right? We want Notre Dame to fight back against all this. Well, nobody cares that Iowa State's not playing in a bowl game. Nobody cares that Kansas State turned down a bowl game. Nobody cares that Baylor turned down a bowl game. Nobody cares that Florida State at 5-7 turned down a bowl game. Who's the only team everybody's talking about turning down a bowl game? Notre Dame. Which is part of the reason why I think they don't want to play it. It's like, you guys keep making money off us, screwing us over, talking about us. Like, no, we're not complaining to that game. So I understand it, even though I don't necessarily like it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can support it, but not like it. I don't like it because I wanted to cover the game. I wanted to be at the game. I wanted to go to the game. I wanted to be able to talk about the matchups and break down film and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't like it, but I understand it, and I'm supportive of the things that I've heard about why they made the decision that they made. And, I was glad that he said what he said and made very clear. It's crystal clear coming out of this that this was a player-driven decision. I'm sure they were given some guidance on pros and cons. The program to be incompetent not to do that. And I think Pete Bevacqua made clear that there was some of that. I appreciate the fact that he basically said that Marcus Freeman told them to take a beat, take a deep breath, go talk about it, and then we'll come back. And instead of letting them make that initial emotional decision, force them to be grown-ups, go be leaders, talk about it with your team, and then you guys decide what we want to do. I thought that was important to discuss.
I did as well. Very important to provide that clarity, and I appreciate Pete Bevacqua for doing so. One of the other things that he was asked that we thought that was really interesting, he got a question on if he had spoken to any other of the P4 commissioners after the playoff rankings came out, and he said that he's talked to Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and so he said, quote, "Since Sunday, the only commissioner I've spoken to on a couple of great conversations with was Greg Sankey. Greg and I talk all the time, but I can't tell you how much I admire Greg and his leadership." He said, good conversations really about format and the process. Gave him my viewpoint on the process. He shared some thoughts that he had with me that obviously is between me and Greg, and it's about format. Greg knows they all know how I feel about the format. Go and put the process aside, the format. I mean, 4 teams, 12 teams, 14 teams, 16 teams, 1,000 teams. Should be 16 teams, in my opinion, with 5 automatic qualifiers and 11 at large. So really, he just gave a recap of what he believed the playoff format being and talked about the different pros and cons of all of that. But I think the biggest takeaway here, Brian, is the fact that the only commissioner that he was in contact with after this, it wasn't trying to lob grenades over in the direction of Phillips in the ACC, and it wasn't sitting down talking with the the Big 12 commissioner. It was with the SEC, who they've signed multiple home and home deals with over the last couple seasons.
There's a lot of Notre Dame fans who don't like the fact that he said what he said about Greg Sankey, but you have to understand he'd be a fool and he'd be derelict in his duties if he didn't develop a great relationship with Greg Sankey. He'd be an absolute fool. Whether you like it or not, I don't like the things that Greg Sankey says. I don't like the fact that he's like, there should be 7 SEC teams. But if I was the AD at Notre Dame, I would absolutely have a great relationship with Greg Sankey for a host of reasons. Number one, that's a bunch of schools that we would like to play. Number one. Number two, you have someone who is allied with you in what your vision is for the future of the playoff system in Greg Sankey. What a lot of Notre Dame fans don't understand is Greg Sankey has advocated for things that are beneficial to Notre Dame, even though they're indirectly beneficial to Notre Dame. He's not in the room saying, we've got to protect Notre Dame. They're our boys. Me and Bevacqua, we hang out. It's the things he's advocating for that he thinks are best for his league are also best for Notre Dame. So there's 3 big power brokers in college football. And a lot of people aren't going to like this. Jim Phillips isn't going to like this. Bob Bowlesby's not going to like this. And fans of every other team not named Notre Dame is not going to like that. But there's 3 power brokers in college sports at the school level. So not the agent level, not the media level, but in the school level, whether they be ADs, presidents, commissioners, all that. There's 3 big swingers. Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, and the AD at Notre Dame, whoever that is. And Pete Bevacqua, I think, from what I've been told, understands his role. He's different than Jack. He's going to have to build some trust with people or prove himself to some people. Yeah. That he can be as powerful as Jack was. Jack was around for a long time. He's in college athletics for a long time. Pete's been in athletics a little bit different times for different things, like when he was in NBC. But you got Greg Sankey advocating for the same playoff format that you believe in. If you and Greg Sankey are allied in what is a much bigger decision that has to be made right now, this is bigger than we can fix the process of how it's decided later. We got to figure out the format first. And you've got this guy running the Big Ten who's trying to blow the whole thing up, who's literally like Greg Sankey says things that are the best for the SEC. But then he pushes back on things that he could easily say we want 4 or 5 automatic bids in a 16-team playoff. And if he wanted, he could get it because the SEC is the powerhouse. The Big Ten's the other powerhouse. And their commissioner saying some of the most absurd, asinine things you're ever going to hear, talking about 24-team playoffs and all these automatic bids and all this other kind of stuff. This is a guy going out and trying to get private equity into his league to get them billions of dollars. Like that guy, you've got to basically say, we're not going to let you get your way because what you want is ridiculous. So if 2 of the 3 big swingers are kind of coming together and allying in these very important decisions, that's good for Notre Dame. So people cannot like the fact that he's allying with the SEC commissioner, but he needs to be for a whole lot of reasons. And so I don't like I'm not a big Greg Sankey fan. You guys know that. But the reality is you need Greg Sankey as an ally in this process, especially with the Big Ten, with the craziness that the Big Ten is doing. I mean, they're completely trying to blow up the whole system. And even worse than what some people think is going on. So I think that's why it's important that Pete Bevacqua and Greg Sankey have a very strong relationship, whether people like it or not. That's just doing your job. And you all know how I feel about ESPN, right? You all know how I feel about the SEC. You all know how I feel about Greg Sankey. I'm telling you right now, if Pete Bevacqua knocked on my door and said, Brian, I got a great opportunity to go do this, this, and this, and I want you to be the next athletic director at Notre Dame, one of the first calls I'm making is to Greg Sankey and say, hey, how do we work together? What can we do to be partners in this college football world? Have to be. And if I wasn't willing to do that, then I should not be the athletic director at Notre Dame. Whether we like it or not, that's just the reality. And I also think that if you're boys with the SEC, then that means the Big Ten has to be real careful how they come at you as well. Because they know how fine. You want to try to screw us over, we'll just go run to the SEC and schedule a scheduling agreement with them. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying is like, that's why we need to kind of take a deep breath. We don't have to like that they're friends, but understand that's absolutely a needed relationship.
I mean,
very needed relationship.
At the end of the day, we have a bunch of different people part of the Irish Breakdown community, and they are working a bunch of different occupations. Do you like every single person that you work for and you're best friends with every single person that you work for or work with? I'm extremely blessed that the people that I work for and work with, I am all friends with. And Brian is great. And no, but in all seriousness,
you got the card, Trevor. You've got the "I'm great" card. I sent you that.
Yeah.
Come on, buddy.
Well, I spilled some water on the sticky note. I'll make sure for tomorrow.
I sent you a 100-pack, dude. Just pull out the next one.
But in all seriousness, I'm very blessed to work with people that I get along with and I all consider friends. Now, with that being said, that has not been the case at every place I've been employed. Sometimes you kind of have to hitch your wagon to somebody that can help you out in the business space that, you're not going to go grab a drink with afterwards, that you're not going to go get dinner with afterwards. And that's where I'm at looking at this. It's a business at the end of the day. It's business and entertainment. And that's sometimes
but you can also be friends with someone who you don't agree with all the things that they believe in. You don't have to agree that Greg Sankey thinks there should be 7 playoff teams in to be like, hey, I get along well with this guy. Right. That's the whole point. I don't like the SEC. I don't like a lot of things that Greg Sankey says, but the relationship between Notre Dame and the SEC has to be strong. Has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big swingers in this sport.
Yep.
And so that's why it made total sense. And I also think don't miss the other part of this. And this is what I think people are missing. Talking about your great relationship and the multiple calls you've had with Greg Sankey since Sunday, don't think that's also not a shot across the bow at the ACC and the Big Ten, especially the ACC. Don't lose sight of that. Pete Bevacqua's been involved in a lot of $1 million and $1 billion deals. This isn't just some pushover guy. Don't let I'm very aggressive. I'm very flamboyant. I'm very talkative. It's like people are mad that Greg McElroy was talking over me yesterday. And I was like, yeah, he was. But I can't really get mad at someone else for talking over somebody during the show. I kind of do that myself. Just because he's not that way, don't let that calmness fool you for softness. He didn't get to where he got to because he's got great hair. He didn't get to where he got to because he's got a great golf swing or he's a nice guy or people like him. He's had to be part of some negotiations for some big money deals. So I think because he doesn't have my personality, that he can come across kind of passive, and I've heard the word soft used. I think you're missing something a little bit. Now, if in 6 months nothing's happened, then you can say, okay. But his delivery style is not what you should focus on. It should be what's he saying. He refers to Greg Sankey as Greg Sankey, our great friendship, only guy that I've talked to, and then when he refers to the ACC, Jimmy. I talked to Jimmy. We haven't had this conversation yet, but we're going to have a very frank, honest conversation, which I know will be part of what we're going to talk about in a second. You guys got to think through this kind of stuff a little bit. And I understand the emotion of it, but you got to understand what was the purpose of the comments he's making today. He's basically putting it out there, basically saying, hey guys, this is what we're doing. So just understand that. Know who I've got, know whose back I've got, and know who's got my back in this whole conversation. And don't think that you hold any cards when it comes to University of Notre Dame. So I'm just saying, there was a lot of those little slight jabs, because the reality is, if Notre Dame is going to do what you and I, meaning me and Trevor, but also you and I as in the chat, want them to do, which is basically give a proverbial giant middle finger to the ACC, tell the ACC they can go pound sand, and good luck dying over the next 10 years. If he says that publicly, now the ACC has something against him in any potential legal battle saying, well, yeah, we did this, but all we did was advocate for a playoff team. He told us this. He said this publicly. He took this shot at us. He disparaged us in this way. All he's doing is saying, this is how they made us feel. But there's a couple comments in there that make you realize he is, I believe, that he's laying the groundwork for something. And he's sending some shots across the bow in a way where he can make sure that it's very clear that the message was received, but not doing it in a way where he runs the risk of hurting whatever arguments Notre Dame may have when push comes to shove.
I think that's extremely well said. I don't think that it's a coincidence either. Last thing I'll say before we move on to his final
I
comments.
didn't even have that on the
ACC.
card. That's well done, Drew. That's like an extra compliment. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah, man, I got you. You're great. And so and so the water I spilled on it dried.
From BGI and Irish Illustrated that watch this show and just love to look for things to hate me for are going to literally come away thinking, I think Brian gives Trevor talking cards that he says he has to say nice things about him. They're going to absolutely believe that.
No.
There's no question.
No, not at all. He does not do that. Help me. So when we but in all seriousness, when I don't think that it's a coincidence that in the last 48 hours, there have been a lot of shots fired in Notre Dame's direction that they need this and they need that and they need the ACC to survive and they have to do this. That I don't think that it's a coincidence that 48 hours after that happens, arguably less than 48 hours after that happens, Pete Bevacqua stands up at a press conference and talks about his really strong relationship with the commissioner of the SEC. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, to Brian's point, that has to be followed up with action. We said this yesterday. This can't be the pinnacle. This can't be the end. This has to be the beginning of what the resolve for Notre Dame's action is going to be after these last couple of things. And so that's where I'm at with this, Brian. I know you and I see this very, very much the same. So this has to be the start, but I don't think it's a coincidence. Now, one of the other things that Pete did talk about in this press conference is he was once again asked about the relationship with the ACC after everything, after the blatant, really just campaign against Notre Dame's football program specifically. And so Pete talked about it.
Juicy stuff, in my opinion.
It was. And he threw out some great stats too. So he started it out by saying, like he did yesterday with Dan Patrick and on Barstool, said, we have the ultimate respect for the fellow universities in the ACC. It's not about the universities. It's not about Miami. He's texted back and forth with Dan Radikovich, sent him a text, all those different things. He said, but what we're really surprised by and disappointed by is how the ACC conference went on a social media campaign, in my opinion, attacking our football program. Bevacqua then went on to say the ACC is important to us and we're important to the ACC. Think about football for a minute. Those ACC teams want to play us in football. Interesting stat. Since 2014, when we started our football relationship with the ACC, if you look at stadiums, the ACC games sell out 23% of the time. When Notre Dame goes to an ACC site, it's 90% of the time. When you think about ratings for ACC football games, when they play Notre Dame, there's a tremendous lift. I don't understand why you would go on a social media campaign to attack an important business partner.
I want to add to that. I really wish I would have saved the tweet because this did not come from me. But somebody put something on Twitter, and it looked real. Maybe it came in a DM. I'm going to find that. But something like the average viewership for ACC games in games not played by Notre Dame is something like 2-point-something million per game. If you look at all the games where they've played Notre Dame, the average viewership is over 6 million. Like, for all the people that are in their feelings about Notre Dame and they don't like Notre Dame because they're mad about this or jealous about that, let's be honest, it's jealousy. It's like there's no question that from and that's why he keeps calling it the business partner business partner. He's used that phrase multiple times. And like this comment, Miami sold out Florida as well. Yeah, that would be part of the 23%, dude. Like 23% means there were some games that were sold out. Like, anyway, sometimes people just say things that it just distracts me and triggers
And
me.
also,
And I just like, seriously? The data is the data. 23 versus 90 is a very obvious sign, and it's not, all schools other than Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, it's 23%. And no, it's all ACC games. The viewership for Notre Dame games, ACC games against Notre Dame teams and non-Notre Dame teams, doesn't mean that there's no other ACC games that are randomly there, but there's not 5 of them, 6 of them. That's like the case this. So that's kind of my thing, Trev, is he's playing up the business angle very wisely. And people need to understand, like, do you understand what you're doing to yourself? Like, do you understand what you're risking by fighting this fight? And then Adam Rittenberg, which don't even get me started that Adam Rittenberg from ESPN got called on second, but we didn't get called on despite raising our hand the entire press conference. Because my second question was actually going to be very good. It was going to be about transparency in the process, but whatever. But he gets to ask a question, and he starts kind of pushing back. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I want to be like, hey, man, you guys had the last month and a half to play devil's advocate, tear down Notre Dame. Get to stepping, bro. You don't get asked questions here. I wish I could have said that, but it's not my press conference. But he's like, well, they went after other people. And I'm like, no, they didn't. There's one tweet. He's like, was it really about you? And Bevacqua was like, no, it was about us. Their target was us. He had another 2 comments that he had, Trevor, and I'd like for you to read them if you have them. The comment he made where he talked about the pending conversation. He said, we have not talked to the ACC since Saturday. And we're going to have a conversation. And he said it's going to be a very frank, honest conversation. And then the other thing he said that I'd like for you to read was he made a comment about, I'm trying to think specifically what he said, but did you find the one about the Frank one yet? But I'm
looking right now.
There was another one, and he made another comment. So we were talking about go ahead and read that one, and then I'll get to the second one.
Yep. It says he was asked about when they were going to sit down and have that conversation. And it says, well, at the right time, we'll sit down with the ACC leadership and have hopefully a very frank, honest, hopefully productive conversation. But I would tell you that it's not time right now.
Yeah. Why is it not time right now? Because Notre Dame's getting their ducks in a row.
Mm.
You don't do that just because you want to tell them we're not happy with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not why you have that conversation. And the other comment that he made, again, this was one that I thought he said. He made this comment. He said he said, why would you attack an unbelievably important business partner? The other comment, he said it was this. He said basically people more important than me at Notre Dame are not happy about this. Because that's another shot across the bow. Who's higher than the athletic director at Notre Dame? Not many people. It's like the president, the board. That's kind of it. That's the leader of the institution and the money people, basically, of the institution. The swingers, the people that make big decisions, the people that – because here's the thing. Why does that conversation matter? I said the Pope is pissed.
I was just about to say.
I'm sorry. That's hilarious. That's great, Chief Brody. I'm sorry. I get distracted by the chat. That's what I need you guys to stay on point. I just saw that. The Pope is pissed. I'm sorry. That just got me. That's not who we're referring to. He said on campus. I don't think the Pope's on campus. He's not talking about Marcus Freeman either. He's talking about the president, the board, as somebody in the chat said, big boosters. That's who he's talking about. Why is he bringing them up? Why did he feel the need to mention that multiple times? because he's letting you know if I decide if we decide to leave, just know this isn't coming from me. This is coming from the higher ups at the school. Because here's the thing. Pete Bevacqua could be as mad as he wants about the ACC and be like, I want out. He goes to the president and the board, and they're like, yeah, okay, good for you. You done with your tantrum yet? Now go back and make peace with the ACC because we're not leaving that league. Get over it. It's obviously an extreme of how they could have responded, but when he says, because he made it seem, and I don't know if you have the exact quote, Trevor, but he made it seem like they're more happy, they're more upset than he is the way he made it seem. That's how I took it. So I thought that was very interesting. Very interesting. And that's another shot across the bow at the ACC. Hey, y'all, you didn't just piss me off. You didn't just piss off Marcus Freeman. The people that sign our paychecks, the people that decide whether we will or won't continue this partnership with you, they're mad. And I think, and you know what? How I read it, they're more mad than I am. I thought that was a brilliant comment because he's basically letting the ACC know, you did this damage. I won't. And he was asked, can it be fixed? That was like one of the first questions he was asked. And he's like, I don't ever say, obviously everything can be repaired, which you have to. I mean, you kind of have to say that if you're at a Catholic institution. Of course, there's always forgiveness. But then he doubles right down on, but I just don't know that that's going to happen. There's no walking back, really, the damage that was done is the impression that I gave, that I got. But his comments about the people ahead of him, I thought were very telling. And here's what I think he's doing. Okay, so we said, Trev, do you have that comment about?
I'm looking. I can't find the specific comment, but okay. I know exactly what you're talking.
I think he said, if you're able to search, I think he said more important or above. I think were words that he used. But the point of that, like, what's the point of that? So you're either doing one of two things. You're doing one of three things. Well, let me rephrase. You're doing two of three things. Two of three things should be accomplished from this that I think are why he's saying what he said. So we just read to you what he said. Now let me give you my opinion of what he said. Okay, so just so we're clear that between real information and then what I think is going on. So just so we're clear. So that's what he said. Let me give you my opinion. I think two of three things are trying to be accomplished here. One is you're trying to let other leagues know we're open for business. We're not happy in our current situation. If you have any interest in partnering with Notre Dame, just so you know, I've been in a lot of talks with my good buddy Greg Sankey. Do you think anybody wants Notre Dame to go to the SEC? Do you think anybody in college football, other than SEC team or the SEC conference, wants Notre Dame to have a partnership with the SEC, even if it's just a football scheduling partnership? Let's say that they're like, look, man, you guys go to the Big East for basketball. We don't really need your whole league. You don't really want to be in our league. So you go to the Big East for basketball, and we'll take you. We'll schedule a 3 to 4 game thing with them, and we'll give you X amount of dollars. Do you think, even if it was something simple like that, do you think anybody else in college football wants that? Do you think NBC and the Big Ten, or especially the Big Ten, want a bunch of Notre Dame home playoff games on NBC of SEC teams? Do you think that? I don't think that. So that's shot number one, but that's to all the other leagues. Number two is, hey, ACC, we're going to give you one more chance to fix this. If you want this relationship to be good when we do meet, which is going to come, I just said it's going to come, you now know where we stand. What are you going to do about it? And then the third is, if that conversation doesn't go well, do understand that we're prepared to bounce. That's what I think that's what I think the statements by Pete Bevacqua serve to do. My opinion, that's what I think those statements serve to do today. And if I'm right on this, then I think what makes this is a brilliant PC. If I'm reading too much into this and he's literally just saying things because he feels that way, but there's no meat to it, there's no hammer coming behind it, then it's just basically the verbal equivalent of him sending a strongly worded letter and then just walking away. I just don't think maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm naive. I just don't think that the AD at Notre Dame gets there by being an idiot. I don't think the AD at Notre Dame gets there by not understanding the business side of all of this or the legal side of all of this. And I think what he's doing is positioning Notre Dame rhetorically for what's to come by letting everybody know here's where we're at without doing the back channeling that maybe needs to be done, maybe get them to come to you or let people know. And so I think that's ultimately what this today's press conference and what he's done the last couple of days is about. I think those are the three big takeaways, Trev. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you don't – what Notre Dame stands for is being about action and having a plan of attack and following through with it. Notre Dame didn't get to where they were at today without having that mindset. Marcus Freeman didn't get to where he was at today, and Pete Bevacqua didn't get to where he was at today. I did find those quotes, though, by the way, where he said specifically. So the first one, he talked about, and why would you, quote, and why would you attack an unbelievably important business partner of yours in football and a member of your conference in 24 other sports? I'm one person. I don't see the logic in that. I know other leaders at the university didn't see the logic in that, and the ACC is important to us. Then this is what he also went on to say after he rattled off the stats about the 90% of the time they're sold out with Notre Dame. He went on to say this. When you think about ratings for ACC football games, when they play Notre Dame, there's a tremendous lift. I don't understand why you would go on a social media campaign to attack an important partner, who's some of our important partners in the football space. NBC. We wouldn't do that to NBC. Now, I understand they have to stand up for their teams in football. We just think there's other ways to do it, and it's created damage. I mean, I'm not going to shy away from that. And that's not just me speaking. People much more important at this university than me feel the same way. So I think it has done some real damage. That's his exact quote.
Yep. Read that last part again, Trev. Those last two sentences. Read it again because I think it's important.
And that's not just me speaking. People are much more important at this university than me who feel the same way. So I think it has done some real damage. I think the ACC knows that.
Yep. That's a shot across the bow. We're going to give you one more shot to fix this. Because as I said yesterday, I do think ultimately Notre Dame would like the ACC relationship to continue. There's a lot of value in it. The things that were why they made the decision at the beginning are still there. Geographically, they want to be in that region. What was one of the states that Notre Dame had the most commitments from in this class, this number one ranked class? North Carolina. That's important. There are a lot of like-minded academic institutions to Notre Dame, more than any other conference. Now, that doesn't mean that the Big Ten doesn't have great academic institutions. It does. But outside of Northwestern, the majority of the really good academic schools in the Big Ten are giant state research-oriented academic institutions. Michigan gets a lot of flack for the general education things that they did under Lloyd Carr and Jim Harbaugh and all that and Bo Schembechler. But that's a very outstanding institution in some very important areas, including they've got a great business school as well. But it's a different type of school than Notre Dame. You get what I'm saying? So it's not that they're all bad schools. There are some garbage schools in the Big Ten. The ACC is different. Virginia's a state school, but it's a very different type of, it's more of a liberal arts type of elite academic institution. What's ironic is in Virginia, I've said this before, the two best academic institutions in the state, Virginia and William and Mary, are both state schools. Usually it's private schools that are the small private schools are that way. Virginia's not this massive 50,000 people, 60,000 people school. And so Duke is that way. Duke's a private school, but Duke is similar to Notre Dame. You've got Georgia Tech. You've got Virginia Tech. Private schools that are very academically oriented. Miami, for all the football, the way the football program is perceived back in the day with the U, one of the things about what made that such a dichotomy is the football team is the polar opposite of what the school was. It's a very academically oriented institution. That's why there was an attraction between the Notre Dame and the ACC. It's more like-minded type of institutions. Not that other schools aren't good schools, but they're different. A school that wants to specialize in elite liberal arts degrees, business things like that, are going to be viewed differently than a big research institution. That may be a great school, but it's about the research. Florida is a great academic institution for reasons very different than why Notre Dame is a great academic institution. They're both, very good. And there's a lot more in common with Notre Dame and the ACC than there is any other league. All those things are reasons why they wanted it to work. But that doesn't mean that, you got to understand your place. We're the big dog in the room. ACC schools hate that. They hate that. That's why the coaches are always crying and whining about Notre Dame. Like, one of the questions that was asked today, it was absolutely absurd, was like, are you going to change the way you go in the portal so that ACC schools will stop crying about you taking their top players? Did you hear that question? I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? But like, they're always crying about it. The coaches are. The ADs and the presidents understand exactly why Notre Dame is the way that it is. And I also think there's a reason that Pete Bevacqua was very much being like, hey, we get along great with all these institutions. Why do you think that is? Because when we tell the ACC to pound sand, we still love to play you guys. And the ACC gets nothing out of it. It's just between us. We'll pay you. They get nothing. So I actually thought in a lot of ways, while we didn't get the meat and, like the obvious, like, hey, this is a steak right in front of you. We didn't get the fire and brimstone. I actually felt that there was a lot of, okay, that if I'm right and I'm reading that the right way, because here's the problem. A lot of this stuff, you've got to read the right way. Like, you got to read into it. I could be reading into it incorrectly because he didn't just come out and say it. Hey, ACC, this is what's going on. You have to kind of read between the lines. I think I'm reading between the lines properly. I could not. Maybe I'm not. But I just think the way he said these things just makes too much sense to say we're not. And somebody just said, Coach D, they showed us we're not the big dog in the room. You're completely missing the boat if you think that. And that's why he laid out that data that we talked about. Go look at the viewership of Notre Dame games against ACC schools, and then when Notre Dame's not involved. Go look, as we said, look at how many times those stadiums sell out when they're playing anyone other than Notre Dame compared to Notre Dame. Believe me, there's a lot of schools in the ACC right now not happy with what the leadership of that school is doing. Believe me. Believe me.
Yeah, it's
So,
like,
go ahead.
Have you ever played a game of chess? Yeah, it's one of those things where if you've ever played a game of chess, you don't go you don't try to go for checkmate in 2 moves. You position your pieces, you set it up, you get an idea of what your opponent tries to do, and you try to think a couple moves ahead. That's what this press conference was. Ideally, that's my takeaway from this. This was I'm getting my pieces in position for, and it could be chess, it could be war games, it could be like, you don't go for the knockout punch. It could be boxing. You don't go for the knockout punch a minute and a half into the first round. Like, you get your pieces in check. And so that's where I'm at with this one. That's where I'm at. That was my overall takeaway. And no, I couldn't think of a good food analogy, Pete. I'm sorry. I apologize. But this one seemed a little bit more tactile than just food. I mean, I guess, no, I'm not even going to try. Not even going to try for a food analogy on this one. It's
good. It shows you have depth. You don't just need food analogies to make great analogies. But no, so I mean, again, Trev, we won't know if this was just talk. Yeah. Or if we're right and these are shots across the bow for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, things along those lines. Like we won't know. I could sit here and be cynical, and I could rage about why isn't Pete Bevacqua fighting, and why isn't he doing this, why is he doing that, and that'd probably go over well. But I'm just trying to give you an honest assessment of what I think. And believe me, I don't know what Notre Dame. I don't have to defend Notre Dame. They don't look out for us. We're telling you what we honestly believe and what we think. Sure. And I believe that when you stack up the comments and you look at the consistency with which he said them the last couple days and the way that they build on each other, this isn't a dude that's just whining about being left out of the playoffs. And if that's all you think he's doing, you may be right. I just don't think you are. I think you're not able to see the maneuvers he's actually making. I'll read you a text of a buddy of mine who's believe me, this guy is a lot smarter than I am, a lot more successful than I am, and he's made a lot more business deals than I have. He texted me this. I won't say who it is. I don't think he'll mind me reading. He goes, look, people wanted blood today and fire and brimstone, but that's not how it's done. There's a progressive approach to the PR battle and negotiation table. You are seeing the ripples on the surface of that today. And I think he's absolutely right. And he and I have been talking about this last couple of days. We're in complete agreement on this. And that's why I feel better saying this publicly, because he's telling me he agrees with me. It's like, okay, well, if he agrees with me, then this isn't just me looking for the spin, because believe me, he wants Notre Dame to fight. This guy wants Notre Dame to fight. So I do believe that they're doing it the right way as long as action follows the words. That'll ultimately tell us if Notre Dame is going to allow themselves to be a pushover and they're just going to send strongly worded letters and cry to the media about how unfairly they're treated, or, okay, you want to try to play us? You won't like what happens next. You know what I mean? Because we're going to show you how important we are. And he made several times like how important they are to the ACC. Like that was the context of the stadium thing. It's like, look how important we are to you. That was, in my opinion, a stroke of genius, honestly. Because there's ACC fans who are like, there's no way that's true. There's no way that's true. Yep, it's true. And now it's like, okay, what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't do what we want you to do about it, whatever that is, then trust me, you're not going to like what comes next. Nor will we be able to afford what comes next.
No.
With all due respect.
No.
You're messing with a school that's got an $18 to $20 billion endowment. Notre Dame will have no problem with its own graduates who are lawyers stepping up to help, but then also all of its bigwig money people saying, hey, whatever you need to fight this fight, here's your war chest. Go do it.
It's tough going up against an institution or a business with deep pockets, and I'll leave it at that. Well, folks, that is going to do it for part one of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to break down the commitment of 2027 cornerback Ace Alston. But before we get there, hit that like. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, now that it is, unfortunately, the offseason for Notre Dame, the best way to stay in the now and to be up to date with everything going on with Notre Dame football, there will also be some Notre Dame men's and women's basketball stuff, more of that coming out as well. You're going to have to be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com to be around all of that. So make sure you're a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part two of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're talking about the commitment of 2027 cornerback Ace Alston. That was announced a little bit before Pete Bevacqua's press conference today, something we covered in part one of today's show. But Ace Alston is the 8th commitment in the 2027 class. He's a cornerback from Cincinnati, Ohio. He's 5'11", 175 pounds, goes to Anderson High School. Now, this is a highly rated guy, man. I mean, he's a consensus top 200 recruit. And then per Irish Breakdown, he's a 4-star caliber recruit, top 150 guy. And so this is a really, really good player that Notre Dame just brought in, Brian.
I'm sorry. I just went to open up another page because I wanted to pull up Ace's commitment article I wrote earlier. And somebody responded to the tweet I put out about the show with a picture of Michael Scott holding a mug that says "World's Best Boss," and says, I think that pretty much sums it up. Responding to our conversations from earlier. You guys are really creative. I love it. That's very well done. But look, Ace Alston, this is an important commitment for Notre Dame. This is a player that Notre Dame obviously wanted. They've been recruiting him for a very long time. He was one of the guys. I always say, look at who Mike Mickens goes after early to really find out the guys that he sees are fit. And this is a young man that he sees as a fit at Notre Dame. He's from Cincinnati Anderson, which is one of the better schools in the state of Ohio. They've made it to the state championship game each of the last 2 years. Matter of fact, the only 2 games they've lost the last 2 years were the state championship team game to Avon. And this is a guy that they went after for a while and a player that they've wanted for a while. And he's a talented player. There's a lot to like about Ace. But when you look at the backstory, it's not a real – like, man, this really cool thing happened. It's like they got on him early. Him and Mike Mickens developed a great relationship early. Other staff members were a part of this. He talked about Coach Codlin multiple times in his press conference or in his commitment ceremony today. But obviously, this is one where Mike Mickens gets on him early, talks about, the academic piece. You can see the fit there in those regards. But this was really just about Notre Dame getting him on him early, staying on him, getting him on campus 5 different times. And honestly, as Ohio State got involved and then eventually backed off, LSU got involved, Michigan got involved, Tennessee got involved, Missouri got involved. All these schools get involved, and he likes a lot of these schools. I mean, you can tell today, you can tell in things he said in the past, he likes a lot of these schools, but it's just they weren't Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's been considered the leader in this one for a while. And so this was really a kind of an anticlimactic recruitment, which I kind of like. But it doesn't make it less important. This is a kid that the staff is very high on. And he's not ranked as high as some other guys, but I always say this. Like, remember Nick Reddish? We're like, look, I don't know a lot about Nick Reddish because he was hurt his junior year and he had a knee injury and there's not a lot of good film out there. But look, Mike Mickens since 2020 has kind of given us reason to say if he likes a guy, there's a pretty good chance there's a good reason why. And then we finally get a chance to see Nick Reddish play his senior year. And what does he do? They're like, oh, yeah, now I get it. Now I get what Mike Mickens sees in this kid. You know what I mean? And so I've had several conversations with people at Notre Dame about that. I'm like, yeah, when you guys first started recruiting this kid, I just didn't see it. And then the more I watch the kid, I'm like, oh, yeah, now I guess Mike Mickens knows what he's doing. After all, he's a good football player. Even some of the guys that don't play a ton, like Ben Minnick, when they got on him, I was like, I don't love this. And then you watch him his senior year, like, oh, I kind of love this. Like, and he's a really important special teams player and a guy that the staff likes. He just buried in a deep depth chart. So first things first, I look at this and say, Mike Mickens wanted this guy. This is an early commitment. This isn't we wanted so-and-so, missed out on this guy, so we had to turn to Ace. This is a guy that Mike Mickens has wanted for a long time. So when you talk about backstory, there's really not a lot of intricate backstory to it. He's a top target. They went after him. They got him. They tapped into Ohio. I know they wanted to be able to have more success in Ohio. It doesn't produce as much talent as it did in the 80s and 90s, but it still produces a lot of talent. And they want to try to tap into that, especially that Cincinnati area. That's really a place where Notre Dame wants to, when there are kids like this, they really want to get those kids. They've done well. You've got Tabor and Penny Powell, Ben Minnick, Carson Hobbs. So they've been able to go into Cincinnati in recent years and have some success, and Ace Alston is the next one in line.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to get into the class impact conversation. And that was one of the things that I had actually written down is the talent pool from what you've been explaining hasn't been as deep as what it's been in previous years in Ohio. But what Notre Dame is doing is they're finding that talent. Since Marcus Freeman has taken over as head coach, they've brought in at least one kid from Ohio each year. This year it's Ace Alston. Last year it was Jacoby Clapper and Preston Frizzell. In 25, it was Gordy Solstead. And then in 24, they brought in Tabor Benny Powell, Logan Thomas, Carson Hobbs. So, and then in 23, they brought in Ben Minnick and Brennan Vernon. So there's a lot of different players that they're getting from the talent pool that's still in Ohio. But for the 2026 class, you go through and you look, and he's the 8th overall commitment, like I talked about. He's the 5th defensive commitment. And then the 2nd commitment in the secondary joining safety Khalil Terry. So they're starting to build out this class. They're hitting an area that they want to be more, have a heavier influence in. Mm-hmm. And to your point about the Cincinnati area, I get a little bit of a window in. That's where my wife grew up. And so I'm like, hey, Notre Dame got another commitment from the Cincinnati area. And I talked to her about the school. She's like, oh, I remember that school. Yeah, they were good when I was there. And so a little bit of a window in there is cool.
Well, and the thing about it is, Trevor, is right now the staff is really piling up on defense early on. This is 8 commitments. I believe 5 of them are defensive commitments, 2 of them are offensive players, and 1 of them is a special teams player. Now, Richie Flanagan, I think, is kind of a swing guy. You could argue he could be a two-way guy where they may decide right now maybe he's a D lineman, but maybe down the road he ends up being an offensive lineman. Right now, I kind of project him as a defensive lineman. But this is kind of what they've done. And like it seems like every other year, one class fills up earlier than the other side of the ball. Obviously, this year, defensive class is starting to fill up a little bit. And, I think Mike Mickens doesn't usually rush to take commitments. he's a grinded out kind of guy. He knows who he wants, and he's like, look, if we gotta go through the whole process to get there, then we'll go through the whole process to get there. The fact that he took the two kids that he took, Chaz Smith, obviously, and or it's not Chaz Smith, excuse me, Khalil Terry, and because I was thinking of Chaz Smith for last year because he's the first commitment last year, and then now Ace Alston. I think it kind of speaks volumes about what he thinks about both players and the role for both players. This is so they got a commitment from Ace Alston on December 9th. They got a Khalil Terry commitment in November. Last year, Chaz Smith was the first DB to commit to Notre Dame, and he did so on December 1st. So we started to see the class kind of start to fill up around this time last year. And again, he wasn't rushing to get kids in there. It was, we're going to get guys we like and guys we want. And because of the success that you're having, you're able to go get those types of players. Now, filling up obviously after this is going to be key because I think they'd like to take 5 every year. But you've got one safety now, one corner-ish prospect now. They can both play nickel. So I think this is a great way to start your class because when you talk about class impact, Trev, the position fit matters too, right? So you got one guy that can play safety but also nickel, one guy that can play outside corner but also nickel. It helps you when you start to build it out the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that I did want to talk about as well is, Sean Davis has mentioned this quite a bit. Brian, you and I have had conversations about this. Sometimes when you start talking about recruiting a kid, you kind of look back at his offer list, and there's some key schools in there where you kind of pay attention to. Perk your ears up a little bit. Now, obviously, Notre Dame is becoming the leader in some of those position groups, right? If I'm let's say you and I worked on the recruiting staff at Nebraska, just say, and I saw Notre Dame offer a running back before anybody else did, I think we're going to start paying attention to that running back. Same thing could be said for defensive backs. But we're talking about a recruit in Ace Alston that also has offers from Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Ole Miss, LSU, Indiana. So a lot of top teams across the country were also interested in this kid. But I agree, class impact. It's starting to be the makings of what we've seen. It's following the pattern of what other recruiting classes have been. So. Definitely a big commitment, man. I'm excited to jump into the film, as I always am.
Yeah, I mean, that's the film is interesting. I do want to set this up a little bit.
Yeah.
When I watch this, I want you guys to keep an eye out. I'd love to get your feedback, Trevor, and the feedback from the audience, because I think he can play corner at Notre Dame. He doesn't play a ton of press man. When he does play press man in the few snaps I've seen, not just in this, but then also game film, his footwork is a mess because he doesn't do it a whole lot. He's more of an off man guy. I see traits that could lead to him being a great press guy. Remember who else played off man a ton in high school? It's this guy named Leonard Moore. You guys might have heard of him. Where's number 15 for Notre Dame? Pretty good player.
Yeah, he's not bad. Not bad.
But what I also see from him though is I see a lot of like a Jordan Clark, Devontae Smith type of player that you can put in the slot and cover a Malachi Toney, or at least match up with them, where you got someone that can run with him a little bit, a Mario Craver where you're not putting a safety type of player there. You're putting a corner type of player there. Now he's going to have to get stronger and fill out a lot, but I'm curious to hear what you think, Trev, and I'm curious to hear what people, in the chat think about whether or not, when we dive into the film, whether or not you think he can be a nickel as well in this situation. So here, I'll pull up the film now. All right, let's get rolling, and here we go. All right, so first thing this first clip shows, that a lot of clips of him shows, what's one of the things that Mike Mickens, we talk about length and all that. What I've said before is Mike Mickens likes really smart football players. Mm-hmm. Over the last 2 years, Ace Alston has had 27 pass breakups and 5 interceptions, and he doesn't get targeted a whole lot. And part of that is because he's a very smart football player. Look at him trying to read the quarterback. Like, he's got his eye on the route. He doesn't lose the route. He's got the route in his peripheral, He moves his feet to stay within that distance, but look at him eye that quarterback. Because he sees the quarterback wants to throw behind him. I'm going to take that window away, and then when you turn to throw, I'm going to step right in front of it and pick it off. He's a wicked smart football player. That's the thing I like. I don't think he's an elite athlete. I think he's a really good athlete. I don't think he's an elite athlete. He reminds me more of Benjamin Morrison than he does like a Troy Pride, where he's not going to be the burner that Troy was, the 4.3 guy that Troy was, but he's going to still run a 4 high 4.4, low 4.5, but he's smooth. He's got great feet. He's smart. Look at the angle he takes here. That's perfect driving on the route there. Inside leverage, attack that ball downhill. He almost trips on his freaking towel there. Look at that. That's the longest butt towel I've ever seen in my life.
That is the longest towel I've ever seen.
I thought dude was going to step on his towel, Trev.
I mean, you're right, though, man. I mean, he's very instinctive, shoots his hands at the right time. I mean, you know who he kind of reminds me of as well, talking about player comps? He reminds me a little bit of Sean Crawford before all the injuries. Like lower center of the gravity, not an elite athlete, but football IQ makes up for not having
Sean
Leonard
Morris,
Morris.
Yeah, great feet.
I mean, very instinctive.
He really has a lot of Benjamin Morrison in him. I really believe that. I don't know that I think he's as good as Benjamin was as a junior. I don't grade him as high as Benjamin was, but when I mean he's got a lot of similar style of play to what Benjamin was. I'd say he's even a little stronger than Benjamin was at that age as well.
The other thing that I've noticed about a lot of the cornerbacks that Mike Mickens has brought into Notre Dame, especially in recent years, is that they're very, very physical at the point of attack in the run game. Like we started to see that with Leonard Moore. We saw glimpses of it with Ben Morrison at times, especially I think back to that 2022 Clemson game. Ben Morrison in the perimeter corners at Notre Dame did a tremendous job of shutting down the run game against Clemson. And one of the traits that he's bringing in is like you have guys now like Christian Gray, Leonard Moore. Dallas Golden has shown that he's willing to stick his nose down around the line of scrimmage.
Look how smooth he is here too, Trev. You're right. Benjamin also dealt with some shoulder injuries his last couple of years, which is why he wasn't as physical his last couple of years. Look how smooth he is here. Just really clean feet, really easy movement. Like that's really nice. Look at that plant and drive. That's really good stuff right there. Downhill, staying like this. Angles are so important in football. Angles and leverage, and this kid does a great job, even as a high school junior, of taking proper angles to the football where you're not getting called for pass interference. You're putting yourself to position to either break it up or make a pick. Like right here, if he gets a better jump, he picks it off. If he doesn't get a better jump, or he breaks it up. Yeah. And we don't see him moving, but you see the end result, which is a lot like what he normally does. This play right here, you're going to see him really be a weird flipping of his hips. You're like, ooh, that guy's got tight hips. Look at his feet. His feet are a mess here. That's what I'm saying. He's got to learn the technique. He's overextended. His feet are too wide. The guy beats him with an inside move, and he should be toast. But look how quickly he recovers. You got to have really good athleticism and balance to recover this quick. Like, look at it. He's right here. He's about to fall down. Right there, he almost falls. Look at that. But within 2 steps, he's right back in stride and all over that guy. That's a really athletic kid. And then he shoots his hands late. Like the guy's got to step on him. He shoots his hands late and knocks the ball out of the guy's hands. It's a really smart football player, but you also got to be pretty athletic. Yeah. I think right now I'm a pretty smart football player, but I'd be a terrible athlete, so I couldn't play. Right? It's not, you got to have a football IQ, but you got to be a pretty athletic guy too. But his football movements are just so clean, Trevor. It's a very smooth athlete, very fluid athlete. That's why I keep talking about Benjamin Morrison comparisons, because that's how Benjamin was. I think sometimes people didn't realize how athletic Benjamin was because he was so smooth, and I see a lot of that in Ace. But look at also at a lot of these clips. He's got very long arms for a 5'11" kid also. He does. And that's
it's the same, very similar build, probably a little bit stronger than what he was, but very similar build and frame to a Mark Zachary. Both kind of 5'11" guys, but really long arms. Really long arms. So Mike Mickens loves
the long towels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, love the long towels. But he's so smart. Like, this isn't even his guy. Like he's not supposed to cover this guy. But he reads the quarterback that well. Look at that. Like, you don't see that very often, Trevor. He's the outside corner, and he's just drives on an inside hitch route. Like, think about that. That's a really impressive play, right? This might be his most impressive football IQ play on film.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very rare play. Very rare play.
Extremely.
People in the chat mentioned Mark Zachary. I think that's another similar player. I think Mark might be a touch faster. And I would say that Ace is a little bit more of a natural corner, where Mark is still very much learning corner because he was kind of a two-way star, played basketball, all that stuff. Ace doesn't play offense, I don't think, very much, if at all. He's a corner. And he's fortunate to be at a school where they had like 2,000-yard receivers at Anderson this year. Like, they got some dudes. He doesn't have to play two ways. But you can see it. Such an easy, natural mover, Trev. Just everything he does is super easy and smooth. And I like that.
Yep.
I like that.
Good acceleration. I like his hips. Like, the only time his hips don't flip as quickly or as smoothly as what he shows in most of his film is when his feet get him in trouble, to your point. So and that's a technical mistake that I have a lot of confidence that Mike Mickens will be able to clean up.
Mm-hmm. That is a really nice plant and drive right there. Look how quickly he's able to plant. And it's not even great footwork on that plant drive, but that's just how quick his feet move. Just boom, drive downhill, get on the ball, close. And he finds look how well he finds the ball here. It's behind him. He gets around and knocks it out of the guy's hand. That's a heck of a play right there.
Yeah.
Heck of a play. He's really good. Really good. Very natural athlete.
Tracks the ball well when it's in the air, too.
Finds the receiver, then gets his eyes back to the football, right? Look at this. What happens a lot of times is they're so set on finding the ball right here, they lose the receiver because they just keep their eyes inside. He does a great job of that guy goes outside of him, right? So he's playing cover 3, so he's got to play inside leverage, right? So you've got free safety playing middle of the field. He's playing a deep third. He's got to play off, but then as he gets vertical, you see him flip his hips and then find the receiver, get hands on the receiver, and then look at him find the ball. Once the receiver looks back to the ball, he finds the ball without getting grabby. Look how low his hands are. You're going to get in a lot better place if you're grabbing down low than if you're grabbing up high. That's where the Notre Dame, Christian Gray gets in trouble. To not get a position there where you're getting a penalty, that's a heck of a play right there, Trev. Really, really good play. Look at the angle he takes of the football there. It's a really nice job. Really, really nice job.
Closes extremely fast. Accelerates through the tackle. I like him.
Yep. I graded him out as a top 150 caliber player on my board. He's closer to 100 than he is 150. Reasons why I don't have him in the top 100. He's going to have to get a little stronger. And I do have some questions about his top end speed. I could be missing it because of how smooth he is. But even when I watch him run on vertical routes, I just want to see him get a little bit more explosiveness as a senior. He doesn't have far to go for me to jump him in the top 100. He reminds me a lot of Chaz Smith when I graded Chaz as a junior, in that I liked Chaz a lot. There just were a couple physical development things that I wanted to see from him as a senior that would then jump him up to that next category. Like where Akari Adams already had that because he had the physicality, he had the speed and all those type of things. That's really the only thing. Just get stronger, right? Because I love how he tackles. He doesn't try to light ball carriers up. He just go low, make the tackle. I need to lay this guy out. Just make the tackle. He does a lot of things well. Very instinctive, sound football player, really good athlete. But to be a top 100 guy, I just need to see either he's 6'2", or he's stronger, or he's just faster. Once those things get better, I think he's got a chance to be a top 100 player, in my opinion. It's a really good football player. I think 247 has him ranked highest. They have him like 112.
Yeah.
And then he's 115 overall on the composite, but I think their individual is 112. I think the articles is 115, right, Trev?
Yes, sir.
And I think their composite ranking, I believe, is what that is. Watch him drive downhill, go low, smart. Listed at 5'11", 175. That's good size. That's probably about where Mark Zachary was at that age. Maybe Mark's a half inch to an inch taller. He's very much in that Mark Zachary body type, Benjamin Morrison body type, Trev. And that's like I said, there's a lot to like about this young man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Brian, let's kind of tie a bow on this conversation, talk about what's next for the Notre Dame 2027 recruiting class.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think now you're at a position where you've got 2 defensive backs committed in this class. And we'll talk kind of we'll talk defensive backs, and we'll talk a little bit big picture here, Trev. But just looking strictly from the 27 class, there's another 27 commit that will be making a decision here in the next, I think, couple weeks. It's Marquise Bryant, a safety from North Carolina. As those who are on the Notre Dame message board, or the Irish Breakdown message board know, he is a guy that I believe Notre Dame has kind of backed off of since his visit. I think there was definitely some interest there, but I believe that Notre Dame has got some other guys on the board that they like more. I think the commitment from Khalil Terry changed the game a little bit for where Marquise Bryant was. My understanding is I don't think Notre Dame is a player in that recruitment anymore. So now the focus is on, okay, now what's next? I think now that you've got Khalil Terry and Ace Alston in the class, I think now you're at the point now where you're kind of going big game hunting a little bit. You're going after top prospects. You're going after the Xavier Hassans. You're going after guys like that. And I think if you look at like who could be the next guy to commit, there's a lot of guys they love. Xavier Sad, they're very high on. Duve Williams, Hayden Stepp, Josiah Molden's a guy I know they like. John Meredith is a 5-star kid that I know the staff is very high on. Josh Dobson's a 5-star kid the staff is very high on at corner. You've got Kamari Dorsey, you've got Tavares Harrington, Jalen Hill are all some guys. Gavin Williams is a guy the staff is super high on. So it's a very impressive board, Trevor. Now it's about, okay, you've got 2 really good players that you like that bring versatility, that bring playmaking ability, that bring football IQ. They've kind of laid the foundation of this class. Now it's like, okay, now how do you build on it? What do you add to it? And I think the guy that would most likely be for me is the next guy I would say is Xavier Hassan's a guy to keep an eye on. Xavier's, he hasn't set a commitment date. I could see him making a decision over the next month or two. If he does, I like where Notre Dame is in this recruitment. There's still obviously work to be done, but he's a guy that I like at this point in time. So I love Xavier. I think Xavier Hassan could play any position in the Notre Dame secondary. I do. I think he's physical enough and athletic enough and twitchy enough and instinctive enough to play boundary. I think he tackles well enough. He's strong enough. He's rangy enough to play field. I think he could be a Thomas Harper, but bigger version of a nickel. And I think he could play safety. I do. He's not my number one ranked. There's a couple other guys ranked higher, not many. Like Josh Dobson's in there. John Meredith is not really on the board anymore. He's a guy that I think the staff likes, but he's not really, not really a guy that is really interested in Notre Dame at this point in time. But like when Xavier Hassan to me is like in that top 4 to 5 names on the entire board in the secondary. He's a top 100 player easily. I believe, I haven't looked at his ranking in a while, but I believe at least one outlet has him in the top, give me once, in the top 50. I'm going to look that up here real quick. I could be mistaken, but I thought one site had him. It's Rivals on 3 has him as the number 27 player in the country. He's ranked number 61 by 247, number 55 by ESPN. He grades out as a top 100 player right now on the Irish Breakdown board. That's a guy that I know Mike Mickens has been after for a while. They had him up for, I think, 2 games this season. I believe Notre Dame had him on campus for 2 games this season. They've been down to see him. He's a must-get for Notre Dame in the 2027 class. That's the next guy on the board for me, but he's part of the big game hunting that they're going to do next. Tavares Harrington's part of that conversation. Obviously, as we talked about, Josh Dobson's part of that conversation. I think Hayden Stepp's part of that conversation. Duve Williams, Gavin Williams is a guy that I know the staff absolutely loves at safety. I think still probably a USC lean right now, but he had a great visit when he came in to watch Notre Dame play USC. So I love the board, Trevor. I mean, the board has got outstanding football players in it. The question now is just going to be who can they get? Who are they going to be able to land? It's going to be interesting to see if Mike Mickens is able to put another secondary class together as good as the last 2 because of the last 2. And I think that's also something that says a lot about Ace Alston committing right now at corner. He never wavered for the last year on how much he liked Notre Dame. He watched them sign Chaz Smith. He watched them sign Aiden Pouncey. He watched them sign Kari Adams, Nick Reddish, the year before, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Cree Thomas, big-time players. And Ace Alston was never like, yeah, that depth chart's getting a little bit nuts for me. He was like, no, okay, cool. Can't wait to be his teammate and compete with him. I love that when younger players commit to early to a school where they're loaded at a position. And that, I think that says a lot about Ace Alston's competitiveness and sort of his ego, which is a good thing. Because if you don't have a healthy ego, you're going to look at the depth chart that Notre Dame has and be like, no, I'm going to go to Missouri where I can play sooner. I'm going to go to Vanderbilt or Kentucky or Indiana where I can play sooner. I'm not going to go compete against those guys. Same thing with Khalil Terry. I absolutely love that about those two kids. I love that about Xavier Hassan. But the question is legitimately, who are they going to go get? That's going to be the question.
Well, folks, that is going to do it for
Nothing to add to that. Have you looked at any of those guys, Trev? Have you seen Xavier Hassan or any of those guys? I know you haven't had a chance to jump into it.
Not too much into some of the 2027 guys.
Yeah. So then let's go to the second part of what I wanted to talk about. I was leaving you an opening to add anything if you wanted to. I also want to kind of look at what's next, because we're going to, as we kind of look at the 27 class as a whole, the defensive class is going to be very interesting. You've already got 2 linebackers, 2 DBs, and at least 1 defensive lineman committed, potentially 1 defensive lineman committed. I'm very curious to see what the numbers are going to look like in this class. And I think the next month is going to be very telling towards that. When we look at how the portal shakes out for Notre Dame, who leaves on their own, who gets pushed out, and how is that going to impact this class? I do think in the secondary, they'd like to have 5 guys in this class. I think they'd like to have at least 1 more linebacker. And I think that they'd at least like to have another 4-man defensive line class. But I think from the people I've talked to, I think they really want 3 D tackles. And I think I think the defensive line staff would like to have a bigger D line class this year than they did last year. And the depth of this year's class and where they are with guys like KJ Jacob or David Jacobs, DJ Jacobs, where they are with the defensive tackles, where they are with Chris Whitehead. I'm not saying that they're the leader, just that they're in the conversation. I think because of that, I think that's partly why the staff decided not to move on to other defensive linemen when they lost out on guys like Dre Quinn, when they lost out on guys like I'm drawing Alistair Viejo. When you saw that, you say, okay, why aren't they replacing those guys? And I think a big part of that is because they looked at the 27 class and said, hey, we're in a great place with DJ Jacobs. We're in a great place with Braden Parks, Devin Robertson. We're in a great place. Carlos May had a great visit. On the edge, DJ Jacobs. You're in a great place with James Buchanan, who's another really talented defensive end that the Notre Dame staff is pushing for. They've had KJ Green has visited Notre Dame. He likes Notre Dame. Jace Brewer's an in-state kid that I think grows into a D tackle that they're very high on. Jalen Mercer's another big kid that could maybe grow into a defensive tackle that they like. There's a lot of guys on the board, and there's a kid that I'm missing, and I can't remember. Abraham Cisse, who visited late in the season from Pennsylvania, 6'5", twitchy, 215-pound kid, really good football player. I think they decided, look, we've got guys that we can go get next year that grade out just as high as the Dre Quinns and the guys we missed on. Instead of going for a guy that we like, but we view as a bit of a developmental player, let's load up next year. So I think because the numbers were low, we signed 11 guys on defense because they were okay with that. I think you're going to see a bigger defensive haul overall. I think we're going to see more D linemen in this class. I think we're going to see more than 2 linebackers in this class. And I think they're always going to look for 5 DBs. I mean, basically Mike Mickens' pitch is, well, look, we need to be able to recruit 1 guy at a position per year. That's 5. That's kind of the stance. So I think when you look at the defensive class as a whole, Trev, that I think this is going to end up being a bigger class. So keep that in mind when Notre Dame takes a Richie Flanagan, when they take a Khalil Terry and Ellis McGaskin, where you're like, well, what about this guy? Well, they're not done. There's more guys they're going to take. And now I think they're at the point now where it's like, okay, there's some big studs on the board. Can they close on them? That's going to be the question. Somebody in the chat, they're not going to get Marquise Bryant. Well, yeah, I said that at the very beginning. They're not going to get Marquise Bryant because they passed on Marquise Bryant. I think Josh Dobson stays down south. Maybe, but they're battling. And with the track record that Marcus Freeman has, a year ago at this time, nobody thought Notre Dame was going to get Kari Adams. Nobody at this time a year ago thought they were going to get Aiden Pouncey. All right, that's what Mike Mickens has done. Is I agree. If you were to ask me right now, I don't think they're going to get Josh Dobson. But here's what I've learned about Mike Mickens. If he wants a guy and the guy's a fit, don't count him out. And so this next couple months of when do guys come on campus and all that is important. Let me say something else. So we haven't talked about yet, and I've been waiting because we knew that Ace was going to come. He even said in the thing today, I committed 2 weeks ago. We've known this is going to be the case. Let me say something else. One of the things that is a benefit to Notre Dame turning down a playoff bid, what do you guys think the Notre Dame coaching staff is going to be doing for the next month?
Recruiting.
Or not playoff bid, a bowl bid. They're recruiting. They're scouring the portal. They're doing the things they need to do to position themselves to get the best portal players on the board. Like, you guys, they put together the number one recruiting class in the country, in my opinion, and I'll have something out over the next week on that, and on Three Rivals' opinion, and they were coaching into deep January. And the guy that was doing all the recruiting at this time a year ago left after the playoffs. And they still signed the number one recruiting class. Now, by screwing over Notre Dame, you're now giving this coaching staff, this recruiting operation with Mike Martin, Jordan Blake, Carter Allman, Myron Tungvalo-Mosa, that group of guys, you're giving them the whole month of December and January to do nothing but recruit. That may not go well for you. And so I think we're going to see them speed up the recruiting process that they really couldn't dive into till February, March last year is going to start now.
Sure.
So when the next open period starts in January, I think you're going to see a lot of kids on campus in January and February. And I think the defense is going to benefit a tremendous amount from that. I think it's scary to think about the fact that this staff won't be distracted by a game, bowl game or playoffs for the next 2 months. Whew, that's kind of exciting about what you're going to see with recruiting. And I don't think not making the playoffs is going to hurt them because there's now so many people out there saying Notre Dame got screwed. Even the guy that I was arguing with yesterday at the end of the show says they were a top 5 team. Like, you've got so many people, not even Notre Dame, not even me, Brady Quinn, Mike Golick, Robbie Tolman, not even those guys, Malik Zaire, not even those guys. I'm talking national media people. I'm talking players at other schools, Bama players coming out saying it, USC players coming out saying it, Ohio State players coming out saying it. Man, Notre Dame got screwed. Well, that's going to bode well for Notre Dame from a perception standpoint in that regard. So I think in a lot of ways that's going to help Notre Dame a ton. Absolutely a ton. Because now that's all they're focusing on is recruiting, evaluating and recruiting. Now I shouldn't say all. They've got to talk to their players, and there's about retention and all those kind of things. But the other benefit is you're going to know sooner who's coming and going. You didn't know until last January really who was going to come and go because you were getting ready for a game. Guys were trying to play. Well, now if guys are going to leave, they're going to start announcing now. Kenny Minchie's not announcing. Well, there's no leaks about Kenny Minchie going in the portal right now if Notre Dame's a playoff team. Because what would Kenny's focus be on? Okay, let me go play my role in helping his football team get ready to go win a championship. But now that that's over, you're going to have a pretty good idea. Notre Dame's going to have a very good idea of who they can go get in the portal, and then also how that's going to impact who they're going to go get in 2027 recruiting. I think that's going to be huge for Notre Dame. And that's not being discussed about. There's negatives to not playing a bowl game and being in the playoffs, but there's also some positives. And allowing this coaching staff to now turn almost all their attention on the recruiting may not go as well for some of you as you think it's going to go.
Yeah, they're given one of the hottest, if not the hottest recruiting staff and one of the hottest coaching staffs in the country, basically a month and a half head start on the recruiting trail. And it's definitely going to pay major dividends, which is such a good point.
And no, so the question was, wouldn't the recruiting staff still be recruiting? Yeah, we're not talking about the recruiting staff. We're talking about them and the coaches. What's Marcus Freeman doing right now? What's Mike Martin doing right now? What's Mike Mickens doing right now? He's not breaking down film, getting ready to play their next bowl opponent. He's breaking down film with portal kids and high school kids. What's Al Washington doing right now? He's not studying the tendencies of the offensive line or the protection schemes of the next offensive line they're going to play. He's in film. He's closing. That's what I'm referring to. And when you are, even as a recruiting staff, there's still things you have to do as when your team is going through the playoffs that you can't do your job fully because you don't have the same time from coaches. Hey, we like this guy. Coach Washington, what do you think about this guy? I'll let you know later, man. We got film sessions. We got practice coming up. We got weight room. I don't have time for that. I'll get back to you, like later tonight. Now it's like you walk in there, hey, Coach Washington, what do you think of this guy? Boom. Right? So the point, Archer, is it's not just the recruiting staff doing that now. That's their job year-round. Your whole operation is behind it now. And that's what I'm referring to. And that's what's I think, going to go very well for Notre Dame, because you don't have to worry about whether or not Joe Rudolph is in the middle of a film session getting ready for, the next game you're going to play in. You don't have to be worried about whether or not Gino Gadouli's doing that, or whether or not Mike Brown's doing that, or Mike Denbrock's doing that, or whoever else. You walk in there, hey, coach, let's talk about this kid. Cool, let's do it. What else are we going to be focusing on? So I think that's something that's going to go very well for Notre Dame also. Yep.
Very good deal. So. Well, folks, that is going to do it for our recap of Ace Alston's commitment, a 2027 cornerback out of Cincinnati, Ohio. But we are not done with today's show yet. We are wrapping everything up with a mailbag, so make sure you don't go anywhere. But also be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we have a mailbag to take us home. And if this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can always put an MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji, and that lets us know to set your question aside. Now, the disclaimer I give every single time is we can't go forever. So if you want to make sure that your question gets answered, you can always put in a super chat, and that will get bumped to the top. But if not, you can also continue to throw in your normal questions as well. Now that we are getting into like off-season content, we will have more mailbags compared to in-season, because we're not going to have as many. Well, not even as many. We're not going to have teams to break down and dive into Notre Dame's opponent, which is really unfortunate. So no, don't worry. If your question doesn't get answered today, there will be multiple mailbags throughout the week, throughout the offseason. So, but I do believe, Brian, we do have a couple of super chats in there to get us started.
We have more than a couple, and we appreciate that very, very much. And we'll start off with Sergeant Steve, my man. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, man. Hey, guys, do you think that Notre Dame will end up leaving the ACC? And could it be for a similar sign deal with the SEC or the Big Ten? And is there any concern about Marcus Freeman's contract? Thank you.
I mean, look, until Notre Dame officially says something, I'm just going to kind of be paranoid enough to where I'm just not going to be like, you all are idiots because you are where. No, I get it. We're telling you what you think, guys. I think they're fine. I think he wants to be here. All my sources tell me he wants to be here. I've heard nothing credible from anyone that says he's looking around. I think his agent has conversations because that's his job. If Notre Dame's willing to give you $14 million a year, but they're only willing to give you X number of dollars for your coaching pool and X number of dollars for your recruiting pool, but you want more, well, this is the way to get that. I mean, that's part of your job as an agent. I think Marcus Freeman likes it here. I think he's happy here. I'm not concerned about him leaving in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But like I said, until they officially say something, but at the same time, if Marcus Freeman had to respond to every rumor about where he was going to go, that's all he would do at every press conference, would be saying, I'm not interested in this job, this job, this job, this job, this job, this job. That's why I say I wouldn't worry about it until I've said it before, until you see it from Pete Thamel, Ross Dellinger, Adam Schefter, who'd you say, Ian Rappaport, John Bryce. Until you see it from somebody like that, I don't pay any attention to it. Or me. I don't pay any attention to it, to be honest with you. I don't.
Well, and look, I understand the concern. I genuinely, I really do. But look, Marcus Freeman is one of the hottest coaches in college football. His name will be attached to any high-octane job moving forward. So to Brian's point, it's every single time his name comes up in a discussion, it's all right, time to reopen the contract. All right, time to renegotiate the contract we just signed 9 months ago. All right, time to release another press statement. So, Steve, I definitely understand the concern, and believe me, you're not alone in that. I do not want to lose Marcus Freeman as the head coach at Notre Dame, and I don't think that they will. I think we're just going to have to get accustomed to, the same way Alabama fans had to get accustomed to every single year. This was the year Nick Saban makes another run in the NFL, because he's done everything he can at the college level, and he's brought Alabama to multiple peaks. So now it's time to tackle that next challenge. Then every single fall down in Tuscaloosa, Nick Saban was on the sideline, probably chewing out Lane Kiffin. But in seriousness, the name Marcus Freeman's name will be attached to every high octane job. And I have accepted that fact. Doesn't negate the concern, but it's just going to be the reality of the situation for years to come, in my opinion.
First part of the question, do you guys think Notre Dame will end up leaving the ACC, and could it be a similar side deal with the SEC or the Big Ten? I do think that Notre Dame's time in the ACC is coming to an end. Am I guaranteeing that they're going to be gone in this offseason? No. Honestly, it would make sense for Notre Dame to slow play the decision long enough to where the ACC can't back out of all the games they'd have to schedule for 2026. I don't care about 2027. But let's say you decided in March that we're not going to do this, and the 5 ACC opponents you have on your schedule decided they didn't want to play you, and they backed out. They can just go schedule FCS teams, garbage teams, whatever. You got to try to find real opponents. That's the other thing to think about, is you've got to play this in a way to where if you make a decision to leave, the decision to leave is right before the season or during the season. That way teams can't back out of games. And now you have the whole season and then off season to find games to replace your 2027 opponents. So that's kind of how I look at it. You've got to this. Look, we all want them to react, like emotionally react the way that we do, but there's some practical aspects to this. You don't just say, we're done, screw you, we're out. Now, part of it is if the ACC sues during that time where the lawsuit's happening, they're not going to cancel the games, but you've got to make sure that this thing isn't finalized and done in time where the ACC can tell Notre Dame to go take a hike for the 2026 season. Because now you've got let's go look at the 2026 schedule here real quick, Trev. So Notre Dame 2026 football schedule. They've got Miami coming up next year. Florida State's already off the schedule. They got Miami. They have North Carolina, Boston College, SMU, Syracuse, and Stanford. So there's 6 ACC schools on your schedule for next year. If you just announced today because you're mad, screw you ACC, we're out, and the ACC basically knew that, let's say they knew we're in the wrong, we can't keep them here. What do you think the ACC is going to do? Cool, well, our contract for games played is no longer valid. So good luck replacing half your schedule 8 months before the season starts. So there's a lot of practicalities that come into this that we have to think about that impacts the timing of when you make a decision like this. And that's what I think people need to consider. The other question that keeps getting asked is, would the SEC or Big Ten even do this? I don't know about the Big Ten. I've said this for a couple years now. The SEC absolutely would do this. What you have to understand about the SEC is, like, would they do the same deal that the ACC has, where they take all sports? That I don't know. I've said this before, though. If Notre Dame found a home for all their other sports that's in a different league than a football league that they do a scheduling contract with that also revolves them getting a little piece of that TV money, then they can do that. So I don't think it's impossible for Notre Dame to send all their other sports to the Big East, for example, but then schedule like a 4-game scheduling deal with the SEC. Or 2 smaller deals, 3 games with the SEC on a rotating basis, 3 games with the Big 12, something along those lines. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I don't think they have to be a package deal. I think what the school would like is that if they were a package deal, certainly what Notre Dame would prefer, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to allow myself to get sidetracked today, but there's a lot of people that have very misguided opinions on how much Notre Dame needs other conferences and vice versa. So There's a reason conferences constantly try to get Notre Dame into their leagues. They understand what that would be like. So anyway, I could see that, but that's also part of the reason that you have to take your time and do this the right way. If you bail on, it's like firing a coach. What did we say when James Franklin got fired? This seems like a bit of an emotional decision. Who are they going to hire to replace him? With all due respect to Matt Campbell, I don't know that they upgraded. He's a better in-game coach, but is he better at recruiting and development and all those things and motivation that James Franklin is? That's debatable. I mean, last big game that Matt Campbell coached in, they got blown out in the Big 12 title game. So you've got to be smart about this. You don't make emotional decisions. Penn State made an emotional decision, and when you listen to the leaked meeting that the AD had, you get it. He's an emotional guy, and I think he made an emotional decision, and it wasn't a practical decision. That's why they ended up with the coach they ended up with. I think Florida had a little bit more of a pragmatic approach. They knew who their main target was, and if they didn't get him, they knew exactly who they were going to turn to.
Yep. And
that's why they ended up with a good offseason hire quickly. You don't make emotional decisions. There's a lot that goes into this that I think sometimes we, including myself, don't think about.
Super chat from Marcus Briggs. Appreciate you. I know it will take years, but do you think Notre Dame's best strategy for preserving their independence is convincing other teams to go independent? No. Look, we have to accept the mindset. We have to accept the reality that Notre Dame is just going to be independent, and they don't need other people's help to remain independent. That's my opinion. I'm also under the notion that I don't think Notre Dame needs a scheduling agreement with other conferences to survive being independent. I don't. Teams will consistently continue to schedule Notre Dame. Everything that Pete Bevacqua has done has been extremely calculated, talking about how, hey, we don't have a problem with the individual institutions in the ACC. We have a problem with the conference leadership and how they handled this. We don't have a problem with Miami, NC State, Florida State. Went on to name a bunch of different teams. He mentioned those teams for a reason. Why did he mention NC State? Because they want to get out there and continue to recruit and get in front of the eyes of local kids in North Carolina. Why did he mention Miami? It's because that they have a long-standing relationship. It's a historic rivalry in college football. They're still one of the bigger brands in college football, especially the bigger brands in the ACC. So, no, Notre Dame to remain independent doesn't have to convince other teams to be independent. I go back to the history lesson that we talked about a couple weeks ago on the show. And we talked about how, Notre Dame's independence, one of the reasons why they're still the only independent team is they're the only team that's built to thrive being independent. And then there's all this conversation around, well, maybe they convince a bunch of other teams to be independent, and then they form an independent league. And it's like, well, that defeats the purpose of being independent. And so, no, Marcus, in short, Notre Dame doesn't have to convince other teams to be independent to preserve their independence. It's just not needed.
No, it's not needed. Agree with everything Trevor said. Now, do I think there would Notre Dame be happy if USC and Michigan left the Big Ten, for example, and decided to go independent? Yeah, I think they would. Would they immediately make scheduling agreements with both those schools long-term? Yeah, I think they would. I think that Notre Dame would like it if other schools did that. I just don't think Notre Dame believes that they need that to survive. Because here's the thing. So when I look at it from this standpoint, so let's say Michigan, USC, Texas, 5 or 6 schools like that decided, hey, look, we can go get this deal with so-and-so that wasn't there 10 years ago. Maybe now there might be more schools willing to take that chance. Here's the problem with it all. It all comes down to TV money. That's what it all comes down to. Schools are greatly determined. Their entire survival depends, as they're run now, depends on being able to have the TV dollars that you bring in every year. That's why all these teams stop being independent. Not that long ago, Trev, 5-10 years ago, you had, 4 options? And it was like NBC, CBS, actually Fox Sports, and ESPN. That was it. Well, now you've got streaming services. You've got those networks and their own streaming services. You've got Amazon Prime is starting to do sports. Netflix is talking about wanting to get into sports. You're starting to see more of these entities that are going to try to be challengers to the big TV networks. You don't think of because here's the thing. Let's just say I'm Amazon Prime and I want to start having college sports. Wouldn't it be a whole lot cheaper for me to say, hey, Notre Dame, Michigan, and USC, Texas, we'll give the four of you $100 million each to host all your home games? That makes a lot more financial sense than we're going to go pay $3 billion a year, which the SEC, which ESPN did, to get 16 SEC teams, which means you also have to put Vanderbilt on your TV. You have to put Kentucky, Mississippi State, all these other things on your TV. You see what I'm saying? Like there's benefits to that Notre Dame could also kind of have, where anything that kind of tears down at ESPN supremacy, I think is honestly good for the sport. And hopefully eventually leads to where it's all pooled together anyway. That's the ultimate goal. Is whoever wants to host games, you can pay X amount of dollars, but you can't, and you can pay for the SEC, but understand that money's going to everybody. That's the dream. I don't know how that's possible, but that's the dream. So I think there's benefits to Notre Dame if that were to happen. But to Trev's point, you don't need that to happen for them to survive, because right now there's still plenty of interest in them. Like NBC did not give Notre Dame a huge pay raise last year in their extension because nobody else wanted Notre Dame, and they did it out of pity. They knew that they didn't extend Notre Dame, that it was going to cost them a lot of money in a short period of time, because there are other suitors.
Yep.
That's kind of my thing. So I do think there could be a day where more teams go independent if they have the right leadership. Because here's the thing, it takes courage. The problem with a lot of people that inherited something, so not that they built something, like you ever notice people that start companies maintain risk-taking almost the entire time? Whether you like that person or not, or that company or not, they always take those risks because that's how they built their empire. But a lot of times you'll see people that inherit an empire tend to be less risk averse. That's true in academics as well. That's true in leadership of institutions, of conferences. Well, I don't know if I'm willing to take that risk of being independent when I know I'm getting $80 million a year from the SEC.
Sure.
Why would I risk going outside of that and getting more? Well, it's going to take somebody to say, hey, look, if you leave that the next time, we'll pay you X number of dollars. But then you also have to have somebody that views it as beneficial to them to have 7 teams in there. I also want to point out, too, that Notre Dame is not going to go start their own conference. If Notre Dame wanted to be in a conference that bad, they just would start one or join one that's already there. It would be way more costly to start a conference, because what is, like, let's think about this for a second. If you start a conference, what do you need to do? You just get those 8 teams in your league. Nope. You need an office. You need to go create your entity. There's all the tax money you've got to pay. You've got to staff it. Who's going to schedule? Who's going to do PR? Who's going to do this? That's hundreds of people you got to go hire and train. Who's going to run our games? Who's going to be our broadcast partner? Who's going to be our officiating crew? Like, there are so many things that go into running a conference that you're starting from scratch. Now, when I say starting from scratch, you're hiring people from other conferences to do things. But you got to go buy you got to go buy a building, an office space. There's so many things that you got to negotiate, all these kind of contracts. If you wanted to be in a conference, just join a freaking conference. Now, do I think Notre Dame would welcome an association of independent teams that have basically agreements with each other? That's way cheaper. And then they can work out a TV deal for someone to host all of them. But they don't need a commissioner. They don't need, they're all their own brand, but they pull together for certain things. I certainly would say that could be there, but they're not going to start their own conference. I see that said a lot. They're not going to, they're not going to do that.
Another one from Sergeant Steve. Appreciate you. Thank you to Coach Brian and Trevor for being voices of reason that we all need. Coach Brian, great job with McElroy. You guys are first class. So glad I found you guys. God bless. # Go Irish.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service as well.
From Irish for Life 99, thank you for the super chat. Can we have an IB meetup at Miami Lakes Grill on 12/20 to eat wings and watch Miami get beat by A&M?
No, we're not going to do that. That was a lot of fun, by the way, last year. We did that before the Orange Bowl. That'd be a little too costly for me, my friend, but that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you. Here's a good one that just kind of popped up. I want to get to this one.
Super chat from Lil K Dub. Appreciate it.
Your kids are absolutely, if that's one or two, I can't tell if that's one or two shots of one kid or you have twins, but your kids are absolutely adorable. Thank you for having that on there. Appreciate that.
Appreciate that and appreciate the super chat. Brian, a few days ago, you wanted to know if Pete had guts like Jack did not to get bullied around. Has the last 2 days answered that? Thanks.
No, because words are not why Jack Swarbrick was feared. Actions were. I don't know the answers to that. I mean, Pete Bevacqua can say all the mean, ragey things he wants and rail about what's happened to them, or he could be just sit there and just chill and not say as much as we want, and neither one of those things matters. At the end of the day, what matters is what does he do? That's what made Jack a force. He did things. He was wheeling and dealing. He was throwing the weight of Notre Dame around and the weight of his relationships around. I don't know that Pete's doing that. I don't know that he's not doing that. I genuinely don't know. This is really the first big test of the Pete Bevacqua era, right? I mean, this is it. How's he going to handle it? I don't know. He's saying things today that give me optimism that this is going to get answered positively. But I need to see the actions. I don't care what he says at a press conference. I don't care what he says to Dan Patrick. Neither does the ACC. Whine all you want. See you next year on the field, and for the next 10 years on the field. And by the way, you better hope this doesn't happen again next year, because we're going to do it again, because you just showed us that you're just going to cry about it and not do anything about it. Those are my thoughts. But if he's doing things behind the scenes, then the ACC is going to come to regret their decision. That's what I care about. That's what I care about.
Yep. Hopefully that question.
This is a longer term thing. This is a longer term thing. Well, I told my dad yesterday, I can't remember if it said 3 months or 6 months. He was like, do you think Pete Bevacqua was going to do what it takes? And I said, ask me again. And I think it was 3 months or 6 months or something like that. I don't know. I said to my dad, I don't care what he says in the press conference. I care about what he does coming out of the press conference. That means a whole lot more to me than what he says. But what he said leads me to believe that actions are going to follow. Now we just need to see those actions. Is that a fair way of saying it, Trev?
Sure is.
Thank you, sir.
Super chat from the King Tut. Appreciate you. You think the last couple of days will have an effect on J Love's Heisman campaign, good or bad?
I mean, it could. People could be upset about Notre Dame not playing in a bowl game and not vote for him because, they're in their feelings. I mean, I'm sure there's people like that. I don't know that it's going to have an impact on it from the standpoint of it sways it what was going to happen one way or the other. I don't think that.
Super chat from, oh boy, S.
Ridno.
Appreciate you. Regarding Pete Bevacqua in these high leverage situations, you can't just say what feels good. You need to speak with purpose.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. That's kind of what we were saying in that segment, right? Like, look, you guys can, like, let me go on Greg McElroy's show and have this big fight, or let me have, go on Crane and Company and have a debate between. I tend to like those guys. I get along with them well. And let me have the emotional debates and stuff like that. Let Brady Quinn go on Twitter and have the debates he's having. You know what I mean? Like, let us have the emotional fight. Now, I think that I'm not just being emotional. I think I'm bringing data to every fight that I've been in, argument that I've been in so far. Let us handle those. That's kind of our sphere. I don't need Pete Bevacqua to pound on the table and say, this is a wrong, this is an injustice that'll never be done again, and then not do anything about it. Now, I mean, would I feel better? Would I have some articles that would get us a lot of clicks from that? Sure. But from a standpoint of, is that going to do anything for Notre Dame? No. But if he stands there and just says very calmly the things that he said today, and then it's followed by action that back up those things, then guess what? This won't happen to Notre Dame again. Or the ACC may go at Notre Dame, but Notre Dame won't care because, well, we're not partnered with them.
Yep.
So let them cry all they want. Because here's the reality that the ACC doesn't want to admit, and that Miami fans don't want to admit. Take Miami off and take Notre Dame off of Miami's schedule and replace them with Iowa State. And where's Miami ranked? Take Miami off Notre Dame's schedule and replace them with Iowa State. And where's Notre Dame right now?
Probably 6 at least.
Getting ready to host a playoff game. If you take Notre Dame off of Miami's schedule, then what happens? When Notre Dame consistently beats up the ACC, we have to constantly hear they don't play anybody. But when an ACC team beats Notre Dame, their entire season is built around that. Because what's Miami's win? Literally, Miami's only ranked win is over Notre Dame. Their next best win is South Florida, maybe Pitt. That's it. So that's what the ACC doesn't realize. That's why Clemson was smart enough to say, we want Notre Dame every year.
Yep. Super chat from Raymond Hartman. Appreciate you, man. Do you think the new Notre Dame is in as long as they finish in the top 12 was already in place because they knew they were leaving Notre Dame out? Thanks.
No, we've talked about this since the summer. We've talked about this for a while. I don't know if it was me and Trevor or me and Vince, but this is something that we talked about when we talked about the potential for expansion within the last year. This isn't new. So this didn't have anything to do with the committee this year. No, they screwed over Notre Dame for other reasons. That's not why they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Pat Kowaleski, thank you very much for that super chat. We appreciate you. I don't see a follow-up question from Pat, so we will go to the next super chat, but thank you very much for that, Pat. We really do appreciate you. Joshua Heatherly with super chat. Thank you, Josh, very, very much.
I truly believe the fact that he even said permanent damage means quite a bit about what path they will take.
I do as well. I'm just not 100% sold that it means they're leaving the ACC. I think it could also mean that there's some major changes within the ACC to keep them. We're going to take advantage of this. We're either going to get out of here, or if you want us to stay, you better make some major changes. I do think that. So I think that those phrases were said deliberately. I also don't think he would have said, of course, there's always potential for forgiveness. I think that is he said that at the end of the Dan Patrick thing when he was asked again, and then he said it again today. I think that's what leads me to believe there's still hope from Notre Dame that the ACC will do what it takes to make this right in a way that benefits Notre Dame and puts them in a better place. And it's not just, well, next time we promise not to do it. That's gone. Too late for that. It's too late for that. Do I think it ultimately ends in Notre Dame leaving the ACC? Yeah, because I do think one thing is for sure. I don't think Notre Dame's going to care as much about the ACC imploding as they did before. I don't think they're going to do things to try to salvage the ACC. It's like, look, if it dies, that saves us.
Yeah, I said it yesterday. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again today. Notre Dame is in a spot where if the ACC starts to drown, they're not going to throw them a life vest. They're just not going to push them into the water. That's where Notre Dame is at in this whole relationship. I appreciated Pete Bevacqua's press conference today. I think he said a lot of telling things, but like we've been saying, it's about action. You can say all you want to, but if you do nothing about it, then you're just like all the people here in about the next 21 days that are going to make the resolution at the start of every year that this is going to be the best shape that they've ever been in and talk about it for a month. And then they're still in the same boat. Pete Bevacqua can't do that. Notre Dame action has to be followed up with this. And then once it will, then stuff like saying permanent damage and referencing your conversations with Greg Sankey are going to carry a little bit more weight. But if it's just words, it's all for naught. Super chat from Tyler Evans. What do you think of the second round of head coaching vacancies that got filled? Appreciate you, Tyler.
I would argue the second round was probably better than the first round. I think some of the schools that filled lately, I thought made good hires. I thought Florida made a strong hire. I felt like Auburn made a strong hire. LSU, it's boom or bust. Lane's going to either win a championship there or just they're going to hate him within 2 years. It's going to be one or the other. I don't know which one it's going to be. You just never know with him, to be honest with you. You just don't. But what were some of the others in the second round of hires? I didn't like Arkansas's hire at all. I didn't like Ryan Silverfield. I don't like that hire at all. I thought that was a panic hire. They thought they were going to get Alex Golesh. They completely dropped the ball on that. And that was not a great hire. Now you're kind of in the third wave, right? You're in the wave of, okay, now it's okay. Who does Tulane hire? They just promoted, I think, their pass game coordinator up to head coach. Who does North Texas hire? But I think when I look at some of these recent hires, like Tosh Lupow, I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how good of a head coach he's going to be. I know he's a pretty strong recruiter. So does that help them in recruiting? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to be. It's tougher to evaluate how a guy's going to be when he's getting his first head coaching job. Yeah. The guy that Iowa State, like Matt Campbell at Penn State. I think Matt Campbell's a good football coach. I think Matt Campbell's a better hire than some of the ones they were looking at earlier. I think he's a better football coach than Matt Rule, for example.
Yeah, I think he's also a better fit than what Kalani Sitake would have been at Happy Valley.
Correct. Correct. 100%. I think he is a better hire than what he's a higher floor hire than Bob Chesney. I don't know if he's a higher ceiling hire than Bob Chesney, but he's a higher floor hire. Like I feel more comfortable in knowing what at least he'll be minimum this. But is that the guy you fired James Franklin for? That's more of my question. Well, you kind of knew James Franklin had taken you as far as he could take you. I get that. But I don't know that Matt Campbell can replicate what James Franklin did. I don't know that he's going to be able to recruit the way James Franklin did. I don't know if he's going to be the motivator that James Franklin was. I think he's going to be a better in-game coach than James Franklin. Is he going to be a better big game coach? How can we possibly know that? He's at Iowa State. They lose most of the big games they're in. Why? Because they usually have the least talented team on the field. They didn't have the talent that Arizona State had on the field last year. They didn't have the talent Notre Dame had when they played them in a bowl game in 2019. It's hard to tell that, right? So you're taking a bit of a gamble, but it's just kind of like, is that really who you fire James Franklin to get? And if he was that good, you wouldn't have got turned down 9 times before you finally turned to Matt Campbell. If they were that confident that Matt Campbell was the guy, then you wouldn't have turned to him.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm at. It's kind of hilarious to see that, to be honest with you. Yeah. Thoughts, Trev? Do you have any other thoughts on? I thought the Bob Chesney hire at UCLA was a good one. I'm just kind of going through and trying to see the Big 12. Did the Big 12 have any big moves? I thought Iowa State making such a quick move was very telling. It tells me that their AD already kind of had an idea if our head coach leaves. It tells me they already vetted this guy when he was still at North Dakota State. You know what I'm saying? You're not hiring him off of what he did at Washington State.
No, they hired somebody 45 minutes later. It was
who wasn't from the school.
No.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like K-State, Chris Kleiman retires and they replace him with Colin Klein. That tells me they worked out Colin Klein replacing him before they announced Chris Kleiman leaving. Mm-hmm. That tells me Chris Kleiman did the right thing, went to his bosses and they worked out a plan and they had his replacement and made like classy way of doing it by Chris Kleiman and K-State, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
they hired this guy who is not part. What's his name? What's the guy? I forget what the guy's name is. He was at North Dakota State 2 years ago. And it's Jimmy Rogers, right? That's their new coach, correct? He's the guy that was at Washington State this past year. He's a younger guy, 38 years old. He was the head coach at Washington State last year. He was the head coach for 2 years at South Dakota State, won a championship his first year with Mark Gronowski, quarterback at Iowa, went 12-3 his second year, went to the semifinals. He was also the D coordinator at South Dakota State from 2013 to 2022. So when South Dakota State had their big rise under John Steigelmeier, like that big rise, he was there forever. He was part of that staff. He was also part of the staff that won. He was the D coordinator on the team that won a national championship in 2022. So that tells me this guy was vetted a little bit, Trev, and they had a pretty good idea that when we need to make a coaching hire, because Matt Campbell's name has been mentioned a couple times in recent years. And I don't know who the AD is at Iowa State, but this is a sign of a guy that is pretty on top of things. I don't know if Jimmy Rogers is going to be a good head coach. There's always risk hiring a guy that's been a head coach for 3 years, only one at the Power 4 level, and I use Power 4 very loosely with Washington State right now, very loosely. But it tells me this is an AD that knew that his coach might leave and had a plan in place. If he leaves, this is the route we're going to go. That's kind of doing your job. I mean, everybody's freaking out. There's still people in the chat. I'm worried about Marcus Freeman leaving. Like, okay. So at this point in time, it doesn't matter what we say. It's just, that's just going to be how it is. But my point is someday Marcus Freeman will leave, whether it's after he retires in 10 years and wins 5 championships, whether it's taking an NFL job, whether it's him getting fired because they don't do whatever the case may be. The reality is that he's going to leave someday. Whoever the AD is at the time, if he doesn't have an idea of who he would like to hire to replace Marcus Freeman, and that's an always evolving list. Jack Swarbrick used to make comments like this. It's an always evolving list that you wouldn't have had Kurt Cignetti on 2 years ago, but you got him on now, right? Like there's always those type of evolving lists that you have to have an idea of who you would turn to. And I feel like the Penn State guy had a list, but hadn't vetted the list at all. It was probably not a very good list, and that's why they looked desperate and then got turned down in their desperation. Got turned down by Jeff Brom. Got turned down by Kalani Sitake. I mean, there were basically people saying, like, this is going to happen. They're in the final negotiations. Like, it looked like that was going to happen. And I think you and I were talking, Trev. I don't know if you did on the show or personally. We're like, wouldn't it be hilarious if Kalani Sitake at the last minute just said, I'm not taking the job? I think like a day later, it's exactly what he did. Yeah. And then they turned to Matt Campbell. It was such a you-know-what show. It's just hilarious at this point in time. And you can tell me, they liked Matt Campbell all along. Liars. Dirty, filthy liars. Because they fired their coach in like early October. And they were one of the last big jobs to fill. There's a reason for that. Because they kept getting turned down. Which is hilarious to me. Hilarious.
Super chat from our guy, Christopher Galloway, a.k.a. Black Irish 864. Appreciate you. Just because you talked me off the ledge.
Appreciate that, Chris, very much. Appreciate that very much.
Another one from our guy, Raymond Hartman. Appreciate you. Do you think the new we got this one.
Gotcha.
Super chat from Lil K Dub in response to the pictures of the adorable kiddos in the picture. Thanks for the love for my girls. They're 3 years apart, but same outfit. I appreciate all you guys do.
That's why I was thinking it might be the same kid in a different picture or two of them because it's the same thing. So that's why I thought they might be twins. But yeah, no, that's awesome, dude. We appreciate you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say dude. I don't know that you're a dude or not, but I appreciate you no matter what. Because we do have some ladies that are loyal listeners and are some OGs as well.
Oh, yeah. Super chat from Jay Wiki Jr. Appreciate your proposal to amend The example from Iowa State to Iowa moving forward. My boys have had a rough weekend.
Yeah. Okay, I get it, Iowa. But I was, with all due respect, I was kind of trying to use a lower program. And I know
Okay.
Iowa State beat Iowa, but they're not as good as Iowa right now. So I'll say Kansas. How about that, Jay Wiki? I'll use Kansas from now on, okay, instead of Iowa State. The reason I was saying Iowa State, though, it's not that they're a bad program. It's that they're a solid program. They're a respectable non-conference opponent, but beating them isn't getting you ranked 10th in the college football playoffs if that's your best win. That was my point. It wasn't like, let's pick a garbage team from a Power 4 team. But I am, out of respect for you, Jay Wiki, we'll go Kansas from now on, because I think it serves a somewhat similar purpose. So, yeah. All right.
Super chat from C. Brio. Appreciate you. Do you think Notre Dame should try to get a lot of studs in the portal or build with what they have already? Great work you guys do.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Honestly. The mindset for Marcus Freeman has always been using the portal for supplemental needs, not the primary need.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame is bringing in the #1 recruiting class in the country by Irish breakdown standards and by also Rivals on 3 industry standards. Like there's no,
it's their own individual ranking. The industry one is got them #2. It's so freaking confusing, Trevor. It is. Point
being, they're bringing in a very high level top recruiting class. Notre Dame is going to continue to bring in portal players as needed. It's never, all right, they need 2 starting running backs, a starting tight end, a left tackle, 2 pass rushers, a wide receiver, a safety, and 2 middle linebackers. So let's hit the portal. It's develop the talent that you have, fill in the immediate gaps with the transfer portal. So very valid question, Cebrio. I don't want to paint this picture that I'm brushing it off, but Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman especially will always be primarily built through high school pipelines. And that's what you see with the majority of successful college football programs now. I mean, for all the talk about what Ohio State has brought in through the transfer portal, and they've had very impactful transfers. Look at Caleb Downs. They brought in Davis and Igbinosin a couple years ago from Ole Miss. But a lot of the players, especially on that championship team, were homegrown kids. They didn't get any of those wide receivers from the portal. They didn't get Travion Henderson from the portal. They didn't get Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau from the portal. So a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids that, a lot of programs, I should say, that build mainly through high school. So they're just going to keep doing what
the best programs, in my opinion, build through high school. Yeah. I mean, you need the portal to, like Miami is one of the teams that's in the playoff. A&M, they have a much higher portal success rate than Notre Dame does. They brought in more portal guys, but Reuben Bain was a high school recruit. Malachi Toney was a high school recruit. I believe Akeem Misador was a high school recruit, I believe. Francis Malnoa was a high school recruit. You know, Mark Fletcher's a guy they flipped from Ohio State late as a high school recruit. Georgia's almost exclusively built through the recruiting like Notre Dame. Ohio State is almost exclusively built through high school recruiting. Those 3 teams are all very similar to each other. They will bring in portal guys as are needed. Georgia needed receiver help in the portal this year. They went out and got it. Notre Dame needed receiver help, little D tackle help in the portal this year, and they went out and got it. They needed depth at tight end and another nickel. They didn't need it at linebacker. They didn't need it at running back. They didn't need it on the offensive line. They didn't need it at quarterback. They didn't need it at safety like they have in the past. Actually, no, they did. They went and got Jalen Stroman. They didn't need it at defensive end. Right? So it's where do we have needs, or where can we get a stud that's just better than everybody we have? I think that's where Notre Dame is looking at. But to your point, it's not – it's look, I think one more year of a boundary receiver, probably. D tackle for one more year are definitely 2 places that I would look, and that I would at least consider, depending on James Flanagan's health, maybe in a tight end. I kind of feel like with Ian Premer coming in, Ty Washington can come back, Cooper Flanagan, James Flanagan, Jack Larson. I feel actually good about where they are at tight end, unless they just don't think any of those guys is a 1. And there's some really good tight end in the portal, a Max Clare type of guy, you know, an Eli Raridan type of guy, something like that. But it's small number. impact players or depth improvement is where they're going to be.
Yeah. It's definitely not a mystery, Brio, that every single year we talk about the FanDuel odds of what teams have, the likeliest odds to make the national championship and national championship winners. And the teams at the top of that list every year prioritize high school recruiting. And that's definitely not a mystery. So, but I agree with you, Brian. I agree.
We will have some shows coming up. I don't know if we'll get to it this week, but definitely next week, where we will talk about areas that we think Notre Dame, we'll dive deeper into areas where we think Notre Dame must and might go to the portal. There's definitely some areas where we think they must go to the portal, and then some other areas where we think they might go to the portal. And so we'll have a show about that. So I love this one from Gregory Gilbert. At least we are not Penn State. Look, first of all, that was true whether Notre Dame went 4-8 this year or not. It's always better not being Penn State. Like it was better not being Penn State in 2007 when Notre Dame stunk and they lost to Penn State. It was still better than being Penn State. But it's very true. Very true.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. What if Oklahoma beat Alabama again? I'm going off, and I hope A&M dog walks Miami.
Man. It's possible. I mean, the way Alabama's offense has been playing for the last month and a half.
Yeah,
I could see Oklahoma beating them again.
Yeah, addressing the second part, I also hope Texas A&M dog walks Miami. But going back to what we talked about earlier, I'm not really going to pay that much attention to this playoffs. I'm not. I'll keep track of who wins the games. We'll see what happens there. But I mean, if they beat them, I think that's extremely possible. Alabama has not been playing good football. We got to get out of this mindset that this is Nick Saban's Alabama. Nick Saban's not walking through those doors. Alabama can't run the football. And honestly, and yes, I know it's a two-sided discussion. It's like, well, they don't even try to run the football. Well, why do they not even try to run the football? Because I don't think that they can. Unless you're Eastern Illinois. Unless you're Louisiana Monroe, because those are their two best rushing performances of the season. So I think it's absolutely possible. I also don't think it's a mystery why the over-under for that game is set at 40.5, which is disgusting for a playoff game, by the way. But if they do it, I'll answer this. What if Oklahoma beats Alabama again? I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest.
Yep. All right. Let's go back to the top. Those are all the super chats.
Ballpeen Shillelagh, speak softly and carry a big stick. Seems to be especially relevant considering Bevacqua recently. How big is Notre Dame's stick, and how hard do you think they swing it?
I don't know. That's the thing about it, Ballpeen, is I honestly don't know. I can tell you what I think. I can tell you reading between the lines. Like, if Jack Swarbrick, I made a comment before, I don't know that they would have come at Notre Dame the way that they did if Jack Swarbrick's here. Why? Because Jack Swarbrick had established himself as a heavy hitter. Maybe they're trying to go at Notre Dame when they're trying to test Pete Bevacqua. Jack Swarbrick's not there, so we can do whatever we want. Now we got to find out how hard do you hit back. You know what I mean? Fights have been picked with people in the past that people thought they could win, and they don't win. You know what I mean? You think, well, I can whoop that guy, and I can fight that country, or I can fight that guy in a boxing match, or whatever the case may be. I can schedule that team out of conference. I know Auburn's got this way better team than Navy, but a couple of years ago when they lost to New Mexico State by 21 points, an Auburn team that went to a bowl game, by the way, I'd like to remind you. Remember that, Trev? It's I know they could crush Navy this year, but I remember watching New Mexico State just dog walk them for 4 quarters, winning 31-10. I'm pretty sure Auburn didn't have the better players in that game that they lost by 21 points. But I'm sure Auburn thought they were going to beat New Mexico State when they played them 2 years ago. Doesn't always work out that way, right? I'm sure Auburn thought they had the better players than Jacksonville State when they lost a few years ago to them, right? I'm sure that's what they thought. Doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you pick a fight with somebody you think you're going to whoop, and then you realize, I don't think so. And somebody in the chat just said Bill Walsh, new AD, new president. That kind of feel like they thought that Notre Dame was right to be bullied. We're going to find out if that was a good idea or not soon. But at the end of the day, I'm adopt what Trevor always says. You got to show me. And what you say doesn't mean as much as what you do. That's what I want to see.
From USMA 87, was RP2 really that guy who made Notre Dame's pitch to the CFP committee? That's our best and brightest?
Well, that's what I was told by multiple people. Yeah, I that's not the person I wanted to deliver the last impression from Notre Dame, but I don't make those decisions. I also don't think that mattered. I don't think they were like, we love Notre Dame, but that presentation by Ron Paulus wasn't great, so we're going to leave Notre Dame out. I don't think that was the case either. But yeah, that's not the person that I would have gone with either. Yeah. To each their own, right? I guess.
From Coleman Smith, do you think this ESPN corruption and tearing down Notre Dame only helps us in recruiting, or the program trying to stand up for change?
I do, Coleman. Go ahead, Trev. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'll say this, Coleman. To a degree, I think so. I think some of it is Notre Dame kind of stepping into the villain light a little bit, and I think athletes like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think athletes like playing for the team that people don't want to play. And when I mean don't want to play, I don't mean don't want to schedule. They don't, like, not painting that false narrative. I'm talking about the team that's like, oh, we don't want to play Notre Dame. Teams actively celebrated when Notre Dame, like I saw, not teams, I'm sorry, let me walk that back. I saw fan bases actively celebrate when Notre Dame was left out of the playoffs. Why? Because they were one of the programs that they knew could beat their team in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
The same reason why teams were happy in 2022 and 2023 when like Ohio State got left out of the playoffs because they had a roster that could compete in the playoffs.
Oh, the teams in 2015 when Ohio State got beat by Michigan State were like, hallelujah. Yeah. That was the most talented team in college football that year.
Yeah. Like it's a very similar conversation to that. So yes, Coleman, you're definitely onto something. I think it's definitely going to help in recruiting. Part of it is because it's, Notre Dame is doing what's right and standing up for the right thing. The other part of it too is just like, hey man, there are some athletes out there that just kind of like to play for the villain a little bit and be the fear and be the hunter. Yeah. And I think that'll go a big way in recruiting.
Well, that's all great. I'll add one more point onto it. It also pissed off Marcus Freeman. Like Pete Bevacqua said it today. He doesn't forget stuff. He doesn't let stuff go. He just put together a number one ranked recruiting class with everybody telling him how great he is and loving on him. Now he's look, y'all about to get the former middle linebacker in the Big Ten, 100 tackles a year at Ohio State, Marcus Freeman. I hope. But yeah. Yep. Bill Walsh, at a CBS panelist, said that 75% of her colleagues had Notre Dame in the championship game in their brackets. That's exactly my point. Even the guy I was arguing with yesterday said they're a top 5 team.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was obvious if you watched them on the field. It was abundantly evident.
Yep. And it goes back to, so Coleman asked this question before we talked about Ace Alston. So this is from much earlier in the show.
Yeah.
This is actually before the show even started. He had this question in even before the show started. So, but I'll point to you again, Coleman, to the conversation we had in the recruiting segment is now Marcus Freeman has nothing to distract him for the next month other than, obviously there's the roster building and all that, but one of his primary focuses now for the next month is going to be recruiting, which he wouldn't have had if they were in the playoffs. I think that factors into the raising the opportunity for success already. And a great foundation has been laid. They had a ton of 27 kids on campus in the spring. And a lot of the recruiting visits during the fall were 27 kids and then 26 commits because they were done. They didn't add anybody to the 26 class since August 4th. They were done. Think about that. They signed 27 kids. All 27 were committed a month before they played Miami. It's pretty good. Yeah. So what that allowed them to do, however, is lay a great foundation for the 27 class that was already started now that they can go into it, Coleman. That's what that does.
Oh, yeah. From Irish Cubby, how funny would it have been if Notre Dame and BYU took the bowl money, trashed ESPN and the committee all leading up and told the fans don't watch, and then both just took a knee all game so the ratings tanked?
Yeah.
I
They
get where you're
wouldn't be
coming
able to do
from.
that. They'd have to legally
Yeah.
give that money. I love the pettiness in what you're saying. I do. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. There's a right and a wrong way to go about it. I think legally also they would have to give that money back. I think when you take that agreement, you have to play. Barring some reason, you'd have to pay the money back most likely. But so like it's not something I would ever recommend doing, but it doesn't mean I can't enjoy the pettiness of talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, screw you. How can we possibly screw you over more and more and more? And I get you're having fun with it. I do. And that's why I'm laughing because I'm like, I love the pettiness from it. You're being petty. You're not saying like that's really what they should do, which is why you said how funny would it be? I totally get it. And I think that would be like that'd be fun to joke about. And honestly, it'd be kind of like, man, that's kind of messed up that Notre Dame did that, but like I kind of get it. I kind of like it. But yeah. Or just went out there and played like the lamest game ever. Like they both agreed to go out there and like play all freshmen, and just like run 13 personnel all game, just make a joke of the whole thing. That'd be hilarious. Hilarious. Line up with like receivers at left tackle and an offensive lineman at like receiver.
I would have let I would have let the athletes be what they were in high school. Like I would have put Josh Burnham at quarterback. I would have put Tay Johnson
running
at
power
receiver.
read all day.
Yeah, like all of that stuff. I would have put Dallas Golden at running back just to see what happens. I would have done all that.
Yeah. That would be hilarious. Have D linemen count to 3 Mississippi before they come. You know what I mean? Like 1 Mississippi, and just do it like loudly and obviously, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then they come. You know what I mean? Like I just make a joke of it. That'd actually be kind of funny. That'd actually be really funny.
Another one from Irish Cubby. Do you think Heisman voters show sympathy to Notre Dame and love while also knowing he's the best in the nation? If so, we can add a Heisman and the 1993 title to the totals this year.
I really wish Notre Dame would do. I'm being dead serious about this. I really would reclaim the 93 title. I would make that a claim championship because I believe. Let me just look this up real quick. I believe there was at least 1 or 2 of the different computers that had Notre Dame as a champion. Like football writers, AP coaches all had Notre Dame, but I'm pretty sure there were some others that had that as well. And I would absolutely love it if Notre Dame was like, you know what? Since head-to-head's so important. Unfortunately, I don't think Notre Dame is sometimes as vengeful as they need to be honest with you. I say things like, oh, well, I would never, you say it, but you'd never do it. No, I think they need to do this. I think that other schools, Auburn's claimed a bunch of titles recently. I would absolutely, without a doubt, 1,000% claim the national championship. It's one of their unclaimed championships. If you go look at Notre Dame's list of unclaimed, so they have 11 claimed championships, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 unclaimed championships. If they counted championships the way Alabama does, they could count 1993, and I would make a big spectacle of it. Since head-to-head matters and nothing else matters, then, well, they were ranked higher in the AP. Cool, so were we. We were ranked higher than Alabama and Miami in the AP this year. We were ranked higher than Miami and Alabama in the coaches poll this year. That doesn't matter. So do that. Regarding the Heisman Trophy, weren't the votes due like Saturday night or Sunday night? Was it Saturday night or Sunday night? Was it Sunday night? Like they were due either right before or right after that came out. So I don't know that it's going to have any effect on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I would love to do the last part though.
Yeah. USMA 87, appreciate you. With football content winding down, will Sean Stiers cover more women's basketball and men's basketball on SportsBeat?
Occasionally. I mean, the thing is, we have tried to cover basketball in the past, and it just doesn't do well. And at the end of the day, I have to make business decisions. Sean will still talk about it at times, but whenever he does a show, like if he went out and interviewed Jadarian Price, that would get more views than him interviewing Niall Ivy. That's just the truth. So we'll talk about it more, but it won't be a focal point.
For men's basketball, I want to do more, but it won't be like to Brian's point about that. I'll put stuff up on the message boards about it. All the more reason to be a message board subscriber, but it's still main focus is football for sure.
People in the chat are saying Monday night is when the final votes were due for the Heisman. So I don't know that's, and a lot of people already kind of made their decisions. Some people have already sent in their things. I don't know that's going to matter. So we'll see.
From Rocks in the Box. Okay, I may regret this. Oh boy. But what do you think the university should do regarding the ACC and ESPN? I refuse to be doom and gloom, and I'm also excited for this commitment.
Well, I don't know that there's anything they can do to ESPN because they can't boycott ESPN. The only way you could do that is if all your home games were played against American teams and Big Ten teams. That's the only way you could do it. So all your home games are on NBC and all your road games are, you could say to American, hey, we'll only play teams in your league if you put us on CBS. Because most of the time when Notre Dame plays Navy, it's on CBS. Not always, but most of the time when they play Navy on the road. Because they have a deal with CBS. And then say the rest of your schedule's filled out of Big Ten teams. You can't avoid playing on ESPN. Now, that's part of my problem. ESPN just destroyed your program, and who's the second person they called on at today's press conference? An ESPN writer. Despite me raising my hand, Sean Steyer's raising his hand, Pete Sampson raising his hand, second person they called on is a guy from ESPN. Sadly, Notre Dame is always going to care about what ESPN thinks about them. The people that are involved in the communication, it's just the reality of it. They're always going to care more about what ESPN thinks than like what we think about Notre Dame. I don't know that there's anything to do to ESPN other than just what they did. We're not going to play in your bowl game. That's the only recourse they have. The ACC, what should they do? Honestly, I think it's time to, once you've done your homework, I'm an advocate, know what you're going to do first when you get out of it. Have an idea. Hey, if we get out of this, here's the workings of a deal that we have with the Big East or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the SEC or whoever, right? Know what you're going to do. Have an idea of what you're going to do. Then fight that fight. And say, we're out. What are you going to do about it? Here's why we're out. Here's the legal case we will make if you try to come at us, essentially. I mean, you can't tell them everything, but here's why. Here's the reasons for us leaving. And if you want to fight us on it, fight us on it. See how that goes.
Yeah.
Because it is cheaper for Notre Dame to get out than it is the other schools, too, because Notre Dame's just I don't know what the specific word is, but they're not a full member. The buyout for Notre Dame's not it's big, but it's not as big as it would have been for like Florida State.
From James Delaney, I think the most consequential update given from the press conference is that Marcus Burton is effectively out for the men's basketball season. Agree or disagree?
I don't remember him saying that at the press conference. Did I miss that?
Yeah, he talked about it. It was when he was talking about he was talking about how it was an all sports press conference, and he was like, if you guys want to ask any questions about the men's or women's basketball team, Micah's doing a good job, and he can talk more about Marcus's injury. But no, I all in all, James, and we talked about this
he's out for the year, though, right?
No, it's not out for the year. He's out for a while, with the possibility to return. But no, James, overall, I disagree with this. We talked about this a lot in the first segment of today's show, and I think you put this in before we gave a breakdown of everything that was discussed. But no, Pete Bevacqua didn't come out guns blazing, emptying the clip on the ACC, because like Brian said, like we said, it wasn't an emotional press conference. And we said yesterday that odds are this wasn't going to be what we emotionally would want this to be, but if you look a little bit in between the lines, this was a very tactile and very intentional press conference, and a lot of things were addressed that should have been addressed.
That, in my opinion, are more important long-term than Marcus Burton's injury. And then Price 2923 said he also said nothing can't be fixed. He put this in before we talked about it as well. But again, that's why I say that comment right there, Price, is why I think that ultimately, I think the ideal for Notre Dame, at least in the short term, is to repair the relationship in a way that Notre Dame comes out of this deal with a better deal than they had before. Scheduling changes, more money from the TV deal, stuff like, you know what I mean? Commitments not to ever do something like this again, stuff like that, for at least the short term. And then that gives Notre Dame time to eventually figure out what they're going to do when the ACC is no longer the right fit for them, which I think still happens I think that was a possibility even before all this stuff happened.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, Notre Dame in the next 3 months doesn't have to find a home for the rest of their 24 other sports teams. They don't have to go and do all this other stuff and try to find another partner for football and do all these other things. In an ideal world, now if they force the hand, like they being the ACC, if they force their hand and there's no, regret for the actions that they took or all this stuff, then yeah, there's options. But yeah, Pete was very open about the fact that it was, kind of never say never sort of thing. So
the reality too is there's no way that Notre Dame hadn't, even before all this happened, hasn't had some conversation with other commissioners about leaving the ACC. I'd be shocked if that didn't happen. I have no knowledge of this. I'm just thinking about it. Once that Florida State and Clemson started trying to get out of the league and the league becomes in danger of not existing anymore, if you're not doing your due diligence on what do we do next, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I said this when they signed the home and home with Auburn. They're laying the groundwork for having a contingency plan. There's a reason why the Clemson deal wasn't a part of their ACC 5. Like there's a reason why they're not going out of their way to schedule multiple 12-year home and home deals with other teams in the ACC. And they're not doing that with Miami. And he spent half of the press conference talking about how, not half, I'm sorry. He spent a good portion of the press conference talking about how he's good friends with Miami's athletic director and talking about how he hopes they go far in the playoffs. And there's no 12-year deal coming with Miami. There's home and homes with Auburn and Alabama and Texas and Florida.
Don't
and
think, though, if they leave the ACC that Miami and Notre Dame don't immediately sign a contract, a long-term, at least a 4, something like that, year contract. That absolutely would happen. 100%. Which is why to your point, Trevor, is why he's saying those things. Because here's the thing. A lot of those ADs, there's ADs in the ACC. I promise you, they won't say this publicly, and they probably say this to a very few number of people. You don't think the Florida State AD and the Clemson ADs are very happy about what's going on right now with the ACC screwing over Notre Dame? They're very happy about that. Why? Okay, let's speed up this death of this league that we want to die because we want to get out of it, and then maybe not even have to pay as much to get out of it. Sure, piss off Notre Dame. Matter of fact, I'm kind of being sarcastic here, but for all I know, it was the ADs at Clemson and Florida State like, hey, Phillips, you guys should really go after Notre Dame. Really talk trash about Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And they're like, yeah, do it. Knowing that this is how Notre Dame was going to react. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't happen. Yeah. But, like, in my head, I could see it happening because it's like, yeah, sure, do that. Why? Because that only speeds up the demise of this league. That would be hilarious. So, and to answer a question, yes, Notre Dame and Clemson's deal is not part of the ACC deal. So if the ACC folded tomorrow, that has no impact on Notre Dame and Clemson other than the years that they were slated to play as part of the ACC deal. They're now just part of the 12-year contract.
Yep.
That would be it. That would be hilarious, actually.
Notre Dame Wine and Cheese with a 2-parter. What is the best case scenario that pairs fan wishes and what is best for Notre Dame? Lots are talking about the ACC, but is there any chance of action beyond dropping a bowl to go after ESPN?
I think the only way you could do that is if they got they had some sort of conversation with somebody that was in the room that saw misdoings. Some sort of whistleblower that said, hey, I was in the conversation. They basically colluded to screw Notre Dame over. Yeah, Notre Dame could maybe sue for damages of what they would have done if they got to the playoffs. That'd be I would look, if there's lawyers in the chat, please. I'm a football coach. I'm not a lawyer, right? I watched a lot of Law and Order in my life. I love Law and Order, but that doesn't make me a lawyer. Slept on a Holiday Inn last night, so I'm a lawyer. I would think that would have a very hard case to prove without somebody that was in the room basically snitching. I just think that'd be a very hard case to prove. Very hard case to prove. I could be wrong. So somebody could point me out and say, no, actually it'd be an easy case. I just think that'd be a hard case without some sort of whistleblower type of thing that has evidence that that was the case. That's my thoughts.
From Adam Garcia, who are some players that you guys could see leaving for the draft early? And could we see a similar trend to last year's Ohio State and players coming back for unfinished business?
Maybe. It's not going to be the guys that you're probably thinking of. You know, it's not going to be Jeremiah Love. It's not, you know what I mean? Like honestly, some of Notre Dame's best players can't leave. CJ can't. I mean, they could go to the portal, but they're not going to go to the portal. I mean,
Leonard Moore can't leave.
Leonard Moore. I mean, he could transfer, but I just don't see that happening. They can't go pro. Is kind of where I'm coming from. Kirby Lambert, that kind of thing. But I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen. And a lot of Notre Dame's best guys are planning on coming back anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it as well.
Agreed. From Battle in the Trenches, is there any other recruits for the 26 class that Notre Dame is still pursuing? Also, when does the portal close for players wanting to enter the portal? It's like
that doesn't even open until first week of January. And
yeah,
I think it's open.
I think it's
2 weeks.
It's January 2nd to January 16th, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, it hasn't opened yet. And guys, we're not going to speculate on who may or may not jump in the portal, so you can ask it, but we're not going to address it. We never do that.
From Dis 6900, do you guys believe the SEC, especially Bama, were paying their players pre-NIL? All those 5 stars on the roster is fishy as heck.
Of course they were.
I mean,
the only person that pretends that didn't happen is Nick Saban. Like, everybody knows that was happening. I mean, come on. Of course they were.
Mm-hmm.
Bama Jones didn't want to admit that. He gets real offended by that, but of course they were. Does that mean they were paying every player? No. They definitely paying players? Yes. I know a guy who used to be a professor at Alabama, and there was a system in place for stud players to not have to take classes or not have to write reports, and you really couldn't do anything about it. They're doing that, but they're not paying that $100,000 to get a recruit to come there. Okay, sure.
Yeah, you're not going to convince me that in like 2013, their running back room that consisted of like Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara and TJ Yeldon, and like we're all just there patiently waiting their turn.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Another one from Adam Garcia. If you guys had to choose 3 teams from each Power 4 conference to play home and homes with, who would they be?
3 teams from each Power 4 conference. So Big Ten, I've talked about this one before. I would definitely have Michigan State and Purdue on the schedule. Not every team you play should be I'm not going to pick Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State from the Big Ten, Texas, Alabama, Georgia from the SEC. You have to put a realistic schedule together. I would go, if I had to pick 3, so like this is just your 12 games every year, right? So not rotations. I'll answer the question the way you asked it. I'd go Michigan State. I would go Purdue, and I'd go USC from the Big Ten. ACC, I would go Clemson, Miami, and Boston College. Got to get some rivals in there. SEC, I would go. It's a good one. So I got USC as there. I got Miami. Did I say Florida State? Is that what I said?
No, you said Boston College. I think you said Clemson, Miami, and Boston College.
Yep. Clemson, Miami, Boston College. SEC, I'd go Vandy. I would love it if Notre Dame had a rivalry with Vandy, especially now that they're good. There'd be some benefit to it, but like you've got the former head, OC there. I'd go Vandy. I'd go Because again, you've already got USC on it, you already got Miami on it, you already get Clemson on it. I'd go Vanderbilt. I'd go Kentucky. And I'd go, I'm going to come back to the third SEC team. But in the Big 12, I would go, well, okay, so I got to drop a Big 12 team because I'm going to play Navy. So I'm only going to take 2 from the Big 12. I'm going to cheat and say that. So I'm going to go, I'm just trying to write all this down so I know what the schedule is so far. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I need 3. So the Big 12 teams, I would go TCU. I'd want a Texas opponent. I'm going to go TCU. Cincinnati. Get a local flavor in there. And then I'm going to go back to the SEC. I got to get a third SEC team in there. So I got USC, Miami, Clemson. SEC, how about Georgia? That'd be pretty awesome. I'll go Georgia. Either Georgia or Georgia or Tennessee. One of those two. Probably Tennessee because there's a bit more of a rivalry there. They've played each other before. That Georgia or Tennessee would be my other SEC team.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's not a realistic schedule because you'd have, while you're thinking of yours, Trev, USC, Michigan State, Purdue, Navy, Miami, Clemson, Boston College, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, TCU, Cincinnati, and either Georgia or Tennessee. It's pretty brutal schedule.
Yeah.
That's why I try to get Kentucky's in there, some lower level teams. You need some teams you can beat up on.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, it's impossible to create a realistic schedule with these standards. This is just for fun. So I'll go, out of the Big Ten, I'll go Purdue, Michigan, USC. Out of the SEC, I would go Texas A&M, Tennessee, and sure, Vandy. Nashville's a dope city.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the ACC, I would go out of the ACC, I guess I would go Miami, let's say Louisville and Clemson. And then Navy every year. And then out of the Big 12, I would go Arizona State and BYU.
BYU's an interesting one because there is a little bit of an old rivalry there. That's not a bad one at all. But I want a Texas team, and I don't know that I want TCU and BYU being on the schedule.
Oh, that's fair. That's why I put Texas A&M in there.
Yeah. That's a good one.
From IC05, is there any point in having the early playoff rankings since these rankings will not be finalized till after championship weekend? Having one playoff ranking after the season is over, and that's it.
Well, yeah, if it's a situation where it's a fair system, it's good to have it out every week. What do we need to do? Okay, like look at Miami. They knew they were behind Notre Dame. They knew they had to run up the score on people. They had to get garbage touchdowns late in games. That's what they felt needed to do, and the College Football Playoff Committee rewarded them for it, among other things. So if it's in a fair process, it's good to know where you stand, because then you can say, okay, this is what we need to do. We got to beat this team. We got to maybe pound this team a little bit more. We got to, whatever the case may be, we know where we stand, and now we know what we need to do. So I think there's merit to it. I just think there needs to be more appropriate transparency, not some of the transparency people are talking about. That really is not so much about fairness. It's just about, we would love to have access to those conversations, because then we could write 1 million stories about it, do 1 million podcasts about it, and make $1 million off of it. That's basically what that's about. That's not going to be helpful transparency. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Another super chat from Tyler.
We got that one.
Oh, we did? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. It was about if Oklahoma beat Alabama.
Yeah, there we go.
From Stephen Jones. Brian, can you vision Notre Dame for all sports except football joining the Big East and getting out of the ACC contract, thus setting up games with other conferences for future schedules?
If they can schedule some sort of deal with leagues, like, hey, even if it's just a gentleman's agreement that you're going to have, at least 2 of your schools a year will play us. You guys can, you can either let us schedule it on our own, or you guys can set up some sort of rotation, whatever. Sure, I'm okay with that. I don't think you need that for like every conference, but if you have like hey, look, we're going to try to get a Big 12 team every year. Either you work that out through the Big 12 or you work that out on your own. That's fine. We talked about this yesterday, Trev. I'd support this. I'd support them going to the Big East for all sports and then just kind of doing less. I think the Big Ten would be more willing to kind of do some sort of arrangement with you if they didn't have to then take all your other sports. Because the problem for them is they already have 18 teams in that league. I think there'd be an appetite for that if it wasn't as costly to the conferences. I think the SEC would be way more willing to do something with Notre Dame if they only had to do something for football. I think they'd do something no matter what, but I think they'd even be more, I shouldn't say more willing. They'd be more excited about something that only involved football, because they don't have to send all their southern teams up to the north for winter sports and spring sports and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, I think they'd be more willing to do that at that point in time. KJR Blake, is this the beginning of the end for the relationship? I think it is. There's a lot of questions like this. From Ken Pluta, if Notre Dame is to leave the ACC, does ESPN stand to benefit by getting out of the horrific TV deal, since the league isn't what it was when the contract was signed, blowing up the ACC without the money? I think that ultimately would benefit ESPN. Yes, I do think so. I think this one nails it, Trevor, from Berto. I think Pete Bevacqua was acting as a tactician, assuming Notre Dame does not give the ACC a chance to reconcile. What do you all think the ACC can do at this point in time? Mount a legal case to try to keep Notre Dame in like they did Florida State and Clemson? I mean, it's going to be a little bit harder to do against Notre Dame for a host of reasons, but I think the only recourse they possibly have, Trev, is potentially suing to try to keep Notre Dame in. That's it.
Yeah, that's about it.
And then last couple from Josh Buffalo, the motivational business banker. Trev, what jerseys do you want to see make a comeback? 05 green or 92 white with green numbers?
I'm going to say the 05. Yep.
Go ahead.
Yep. I'm going to say the 05 green. I wasn't there to see the 92 Cotton Bowl white green numbers.
Sugar Bowl.
I've seen them in pictures. Okay, Sugar Bowl. I've seen them in pictures. But
all those turf fields look the same back then, Trev. They really did. It's like, is that the Sugar Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Peach Bowl? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like one of the bowls that they were playing.
Like, is that in Riverfront, Three Rivers, or Veterans Stadium? Because they all kind of look exactly the same. You know what I mean?
I was but
I thought
for
those
me,
were sweet. I thought
for
those
me,
were sweet.
Yeah. I'm very impartial to the 05 green jerseys. Like I've said a million times on this show, the first game that I ever sat down to watch from start to finish was Notre Dame USC 05. Those things are sweet. But I'll say this about the unis. Above all else, the thing I want them to fix is the color of the gold of the pants. That's really the only thing that, like, I love the Navy. Love the Navy. In 2019, when they had those throwbacks with Boston College and had, like, the lighter gold, not like borderline, like Dijon mustard yellow gold pants, I thought it looked so good. But that's about it.
Mm-hmm. All right, last couple here, Trev. Jeff Calhoun, 8942. I love these. Got Macho Man Randy Savage as his avatar. How would you feel about Notre Dame pivoting to the SEC for a similar ACC deal for playoff security? Could Notre Dame being business partners discourage ESPN from negative analysis of Notre Dame and improve playoff odds? Can I just say one thing about this? I've talked a lot about Notre Dame joining the SEC. I think that's an option. I would not support that. That's not what I want. Because ultimately what happens, and I think Jeff nails it here, is you're actually rewarding the SEC. Them screwing Notre Dame over, you're rewarding ESPN. Them screwing Notre Dame over is one of the things that caused Notre Dame to go at the ACC, which blows up the ACC, lets ESPN get out of a deal they don't want, and then gives them Notre Dame as a team that they get X amount of times a year. Like, I don't love that. That's why I'm more partial to a Big 10 or a Big 12 deal, because then you're making a deal with a network that's not with ESPN. That would be my preference. But you also have to be practical. It may not be beneficial to you to have a deal with the Big 12 or the Big 10, or the Big 10 may not want to make a deal. I don't know. Tony Petitti's an absolute wild card. I have no clue what that guy's going to do. You know, he may say, no, Notre Dame, we'll only take you if you join our league and you not only play the 9 regular season games, but all 12 of your games against the Big 10. For who knows what that guy's going to say or do. He comes up with some crazy stuff. I also want no part of the private equity deal that the Big 10 is going towards if I'm Notre Dame. I want zero part of that. So now your options are a little bit, limited. And that makes it tough. So I think Jeff nails it. I think at the end, that would help is ESPN.
Yep.
Would that mean would they be less negative than Notre Dame?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I'm going to say no, because the second that Notre Dame hitches their wagon to one of the SEC or the Big 10, as much as I think that I agree with the benefit, that's when the fallacies of these conferences would start to come out. That's when it's like, well, Notre Dame is playing SEC teams. That's what you guys wanted. It's like, well, but who are those SEC teams? Can you really gauge how good an SEC team is? Because there's 16 teams in a conference. Like, I guarantee you.
I think they would start. I think ESPN would have more people hyping up Notre Dame because now it benefits them because they get Notre Dame on TV a lot more. And in prime games against their league. Sure. If Notre Dame's good. But it'll be kind of like it was before the SEC was so big a part. They'll hype up Notre Dame when they're really good, but they'll also look for chances to tear them down when they're not.
Sure.
This year, I think they would have overhyped them. But that's just kind of, or hyped. I was hyped them up a lot because it would have benefited them for Notre Dame to be in this year. They could talk about, they're in because of that. Well, they're more battle tested because they had to play insert number of SEC teams, right? I mean, and then next year, if Notre Dame's 8-3, they're, it just, and are they still competing against Alabama? Because here's the deal. If it comes down to Notre Dame as a partial member, Alabama as a full member, they will sell Notre Dame out in a heartbeat to protect Alabama.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one.
Yeah.
And then last one, USMA, what would you think of Kenny Minchey going to Arizona State, Trev? I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, and we'll end with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a relatively decent fit for him. I would like to see Kenny. There are other offenses that I think that Kenny could thrive in a little bit better. Character-wise, I think he's who they need at quarterback. And I will just leave it at that. I think Kenny's character fits a leader of a football team more than who was leading it prior. But from a skill set standpoint, I would love to see, Kenny Minchey and Kenny Dillingham kind of linking up, Kenny squared out there in Arizona State. Like, I think that'd be kind of sweet, honestly. I just when we talked about Kenny Minchey yesterday, I just want to see the kid go somewhere where he can thrive. And I think Arizona State could be one of those spots. I think the Big 12 is wide open and will be wide open again next year like it was this year. And it would give Kenny a chance to, play for a team that could potentially win a conference championship and get a bid into the playoffs. So I think it'd be cool. But with that being said, there are other offenses that I think could benefit his skill set a little bit more.
Agree. I actually like him a little bit more in that offense than you do, but I do think there are some other systems that would be a little bit better. I think Kenny Dillingham would be a great fit coach wise though for Kenny. Oh, yeah. I think that even more so than I think there are systems that are better for him, Trev. I think that's the kind of coach he needs to thrive. Yeah. I could see that. I could definitely see that. I think the part you nailed though is the leadership part. If Kenny went to Arizona State and did well, I don't think you're going to see Kenny then hold a Arizona State hostage for more money or jump in the portal again for a bigger deal. I don't think you'd see that.
If if Kenny Minshew went to Arizona State, last thing that I'll say, if Kenny Minshew went to Arizona State and had a season-ending injury and would likely transfer again, I still think he goes to the team's season-ending banquet at the end of the year. So,
did he seriously not go to their team banquet?
that is correct.
What?
Like every like captain or every person who was like leaving the team got up in front of the team and said a little bit of something. And then Kenny Dillingham, basically when it was his turn to speak on behalf of the quarterback, he was like, he's unfortunately not with us tonight, and we wish him the best of luck in whatever future endeavors that may be in his future. So
some of these young men get very, very bad advice, and ultimately it comes down to their parents. You can't blame on an agent. Sometimes your dad has to say, son, I didn't raise you to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't raise you to be that way.
Yep. Archer said it in the chat. He was the only captain who was a no-show at the meeting. At the team
that
meeting.
Says so much.
Mm-hmm.
Says so much about it. And it says so much about him, and it says a lot about the system and how broken it is right now. So real quick, Kevin Tracy, how long is an ACC Notre Dame agreement supposed to last? 2036.
Yep.
It's the final season. That'll do her, Trev. Great job,
right.
everybody. Hey, Bice will hold tomorrow. Everybody, 1 o'clock. Be ready for it. Go ahead, Trev. Do your thing.
Folks, on your way out of here, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Brian and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. for the Buy, Sell, Hold. The thread is already up on the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. So make sure that you go and submit your Buy, Sell, Hold submission. Haven't done one since, what is that, week 2? No.
Because we didn't do one in the second.
We didn't do one for the USC week. Right. So we haven't done a Buy, Sell, Hold since in between Miami and Texas A&M. So get those submissions in. Hit that like button. Hop on over to IB Nation Sports Beat because I believe that they are live right now, probably also recapping some of the comments from Pete Bevacqua's press conference, so you're not going to want to miss that either. So make sure you're subscribed to the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. It's the best way to support what we do here over at Irish Breakdown. So until tomorrow, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.